Welcome, weary traveler, to the quiet embrace of the past. Tonight, we journey not through grand adventures, but into the most fundamental human need, sleep. This chronicle is designed to guide your thoughts gently away from the day's concerns and towards the quiet shores of slumber. Our focus today is on the genesis of repose, on how humanity, long before electricity, found its rest. We'll drift through the eons, tracing the earliest whispers of sleep patterns in a world governed not by clocks, but by the rhythmic pulse of the sun and the moon. Imagine a world cloaked in profound, unyielding darkness once the sun dipped below the horizon, a darkness far deeper than most experience today, punctuated only by stars or the moon. This was the canvas for early human sleep. For our most ancient ancestors, a fixed bedtime or a single, uninterrupted stretch of sleep was an alien notion. Life was intrinsically tied to natural rhythms. The rising sun signaled activity, the setting sun, retreat and rest. Sleep wasn't a luxury, it was critical for survival. Their beds were often the earth itself, perhaps a simple mat of leaves, or later, rudimentary shelters. The prevailing theory points to biphasic sleep, or segmented sleep. Sleep was often broken into two distinct segments. Our ancestors would typically enter what's called the first sleep, shortly after sunset, perhaps lasting 3 to 4 hours. Picture a small group around a dwindling fire, finding warmth and communal security. Co-sleeping wasn't just for comfort, it was vital for mutual protection against threats. Following this first sleep, there would often be a quiet period of wakefulness. In the deep silence of the night, with only natural sounds like an owl's hoot or rustling leaves, individuals might tend the fire, ensuring warmth and a deterrent against animals. They might share hushed conversations or simple stories. This middle-of-the-night wakefulness wasn't seen as a problem. It was simply part of the natural rhythm, a time for reflection or quiet contemplation without daylight distractions. Historical records, particularly from pre-industrial times, corroborate this segmented sleep pattern. After this quiet interlude, individuals would then return to a second sleep, lasting until dawn. This prepared them for the day's renewed activities, providing the final, restorative rest. The entire period of darkness was utilized for a dynamic relationship with the night. The presence of moonlight played a subtle role, allowing for some visibility on clear nights, which might have influenced the duration or depth of sleep, or the nature of activities during wakefulness. Shelter evolution, from open ground to constructed huts, also provided increasing protection, allowing for slightly deeper sleep, though light and dark rhythms remained paramount. Seasons also impacted sleep. Longer winter nights naturally extended repose, while summer's extended daylight might have condensed sleep slightly. The sounds of the night, wind, distant animals, rain, water, were ambient cues that often signaled safety and were part of the auditory landscape of rest. Food consumption was also in tune with natural availability, with no late-night, processed meals. This allowed the digestive system to process food before rest, preventing modern sleep disturbances. The human body, in these ancient times, was exquisitely tuned to the circadian rhythm. Without artificial light or constant stimulation, the body's internal clock synchronized almost perfectly with the environment. Rising light suppressed melatonin, signaling wakefulness, while fading light initiated melatonin release, preparing for rest. This natural synchronization meant falling asleep was less of a struggle, and waking was a gentle emergence. Into the new day, fire was a central element of the night routine. As the sun set, it became the focal point, providing light, warmth, and security. Gathering around the fire for stories or contemplation was a natural precursor to sleep. The hypnotic flames, crackling wood, and radiating warmth encouraged relaxation and provided a psychological boundary against the dark unknown. Sleep hygiene in ancient times was an inherent part of life. Simple beds, fresh air, and minds not constantly stimulated by screens led to natural fatigue and easy sleep. The absence of rigid, modern work schedules also allowed sleep to occur when the body genuinely needed it, rather than being forced into narrow windows. The profound difference the absence of artificial light made cannot be overstated. True darkness compelled introspection and fostered a unique connection with the night sky, which would have been a breathtaking spectacle. This cosmic tapestry might have been the last thing seen before the first sleep, and the first upon waking during the nightly interlude. Stories shared around the fire were simple, oral traditions, delivered in a steady, often repetitive manner, contributing to a calm mental state. Even dreams held different significance, often seen as messages or insights, making sleep a more revered part of the cycle. The evolution of sleep spaces, from open ground to purpose-built shelters, was driven by the need for warmth and protection. These utilitarian spaces, simple yet functional, provided restorative sleep for millennia. In stark contrast, today we fight natural rhythms. We use screens late, consume stimulants, and live with constant artificial noise. Our sleep is often fragmented by alarms and restless minds. The ancient way was an effortless surrender to the body's innate wisdom, a dance in harmony with nature. This first chapter serves as an invitation to slow down and consider the profound simplicity and efficacy of ancient sleep. It is a reminder that the basic human need for rest remains unchanged, even as our environment has transformed. By understanding our ancestors' repose, we might find insights to reconnect with a more natural, restorative rhythm in our own lives. Allow the details to wash over you, like gentle waves. The simple shelters, crackling fires, quiet conversations, shared warmth, natural sounds, and the moon's rhythm, each element contributes to a tapestry of rest that is both alien and deeply familiar. It is the story of humanity's primal slumber, told at a pace meant for calm absorption. As we conclude this chapter, let the weight of history settle upon your eyelids, not as a burden, but as a comforting blanket of understanding. The wisdom of ancient rest whispers through the ages, a gentle invitation to let go, unwind, and prepare for your own journey into the quiet realm of sleep. As we gently transition from the foundational rhythms of sleep itself, our focus now turns to another profound absence in the ancient world, one that shaped the very fabric of rest and waking, the absence of pervasive, artificial light. Tonight, we will drift through the long history of how humanity illuminated its darkness, how faint glows and flickering flames served as the predecessors to our modern electric brilliance, and how these subtle sources dictated the boundaries of activity and the embrace of sleep. Imagine, once more, that primal darkness we spoke of in Chapter 1. A darkness so complete that the faintest pinprick of light from a distant star felt like a beacon. In this world, the primary source of light, beyond the sun and moon, was fire. And fire, in its most basic form, was both light and warmth, comfort and protection. It was the first, and for millennia, the most essential tool for extending the waking hours beyond the sun's dominion. The earliest forms of human-controlled light would have been simple campfires or hearth fires. These were not merely for cooking or warmth. They cast circles of light, pushing back the encroaching shadows. Within these circles, life could continue, albeit in a limited capacity. Stories were told, tools were fashioned, and social bonds were strengthened under the flickering, dancing light of the flames. The very act of gathering around a fire as night descended was a ritual, a signal to the body that the day's active foraging or hunting was drawing to a close, and a period of communal rest was approaching. The soft glow encouraged a slower pace, less frenetic activity. As human ingenuity evolved, so too did the methods of light production. Moving beyond the open fire, early humans discovered the utility of torches. A torch, fundamentally, is a stick with flammable material at one end. Early torches might have been bundles of dried reeds, resinous wood, or rags soaked in animal fat or plant oils. These allowed light to be carried, to illuminate paths, or to explore deeper into caves where sunlight could not penetrate. Picture the slow, deliberate movements of individuals navigating a dark landscape, guided only by the bobbing, smoky light of a torch. The light was limited, casting long, shifting shadows, making depth perception difficult. It wasn't a broad, encompassing illumination, but a focused beam that highlighted immediate surroundings while leaving the periphery in deep shadow. This limited visibility inherently restricted activity. Complex tasks requiring fine motor skills or extensive visual range were simply not feasible under such conditions. This natural constraint further reinforced the body's inclination towards rest when the sun was absent. As civilizations developed, more refined lighting solutions emerged. One of the most significant advancements was the oil lamp. These humble devices date back tens of thousands of years. Early oil lamps were essentially shallow, open bowls made of stone, clay, or shell, holding animal fat or vegetable oil, with a wick made of twisted fibers. The wick would draw up the fuel, and when lit, produce a small, steady flame. Think of the soft, gentle glow emanating from a small clay lamp in an ancient Roman villa or a humble Neolithic dwelling. It wasn't bright. It barely illuminated a small room, casting a warm, orange light that softened edges and deepened shadows. The light was sufficient for quiet, close-range activities, perhaps weaving, mending clothes, or reading papyrus scrolls in a scholar's chamber. But it was never enough for large-scale production or bustling nighttime activity. Different oils were used depending on the region and availability. Olive oil in the Mediterranean, whale oil in coastal areas, animal fats in colder climates. Each oil had its own burn rate, its own smell, and its own quality of light. The smell, often earthy or slightly acrid from the burning oil and wick, would become part of the nocturnal atmosphere. It was a constant, subtle sensory input that distinguished night from day. Then came the candles. While rudimentary forms existed earlier, wax candles became more prevalent in the Middle Ages, particularly in Europe. Initially made from tallow animal fat, which burned smokily and often smelled unpleasant, candles later evolved with the use of beeswax, a cleaner burning and more pleasant-smelling alternative. The candlelight was steadier than an open flame, slightly brighter than a small oil lamp, and more portable. Imagine a medieval monastery, where monks would rise for vigils in the deep hours of the night, their prayers illuminated by rows of beeswax candles. Or a humble cottage, where a single tallow candle cast its faint circle of light on a family gathered for an evening meal. The light from candles was intimate, creating pools of light that drew people together. It defined the boundaries of the waking world in the dark. A room filled with candles would have been a luxury, a statement of wealth, as beeswax was expensive. The number of candles or lamps one could afford directly correlated with how much artificial light one could generate, and thus, how much one could extend their productive hours into the night. For the vast majority, this meant limited light. Most tasks ceased at dusk because the light simply wasn't sufficient or affordable to continue them. This enforced cessation of activity was a natural cue for the body to begin its winding down process. Let's consider the quality of this pre-electric light. It was almost universally warm-toned, a soft orange or yellow hue, similar to the setting sun or a natural fire. This is a crucial point for sleep. Modern research has shown that exposure to blue light, prevalent in electronic screens and many modern LED lights, suppresses melatonin, disrupting the body's natural sleep cycle. Ancient light, in contrast, was inherently sleep-friendly. Its warm spectrum promoted melatonin production, preparing the body for rest rather than signaling alertness. The very act of living under such lighting conditions was a constant, gentle reinforcement of the circadian rhythm. The shadows cast by these limited light sources were profound. They danced, they stretched, they swallowed distant corners of a room. Objects would appear in stark relief, then melt back into the darkness. This dynamic interplay of light and shadow created a more nuanced visual environment, one that didn't demand constant, wide-ranging visual attention. Instead, it encouraged focus on the illuminated task at hand, or simply a relaxed awareness of the immediate surroundings. The experience of moving from a brightly lit daytime environment to the dimness of a candlelit or firelit evening was a gradual, sensory transition. It allowed the eyes to adjust, and the mind to slow down. There was no jarring switch from intense brightness to sudden darkness. The descent into night was a process, not an event. Think about the time spent without any artificial light at all. Even with torches, lamps, and candles, for much of history, vast stretches of the night, and indeed vast areas even within human settlements, remained cloaked in complete darkness. People slept in this darkness. Their senses were attuned to it. They learned to navigate by sound, by memory, by the subtle shift of the air. This profound darkness facilitated deep sleep, unhindered by external light cues. The limited availability and cost of artificial light also meant that it was used sparingly. It was a precious commodity. You wouldn't leave a lamp burning unnecessarily. You wouldn't light a dozen candles just for ambience unless you were extremely wealthy. This frugality meant that the periods of true darkness were extensive, allowing the body ample opportunity to produce melatonin and prepare for rest. The concept of a night shift, or working through the night, was practically non-existent for the vast majority of people for most of history. Only specific, critical roles, like night watchmen guarding a city, or sailors navigating by stars, would operate extensively in the dark, and even then, their activities were often limited by the available light sources. The natural cessation of work at dusk was a universal rhythm, a collective agreement with the body's natural need for repose. This natural rhythm, enforced by the limitations of light, played a significant role in the segmented sleep pattern we discussed. When darkness truly descended, and the limited, artificial light available was used up or extinguished, there was simply less to do. This quiet, dark interlude naturally led to the first sleep, and the long hours of darkness between the first sleep and the dawn allowed ample time for the natural wakeful period, followed by the second sleep, before the inevitable return of the sun's bright, invigorating light. The reliance on natural light sources, the sun, the moon, and stars, for navigation and timekeeping further reinforced humanity's connection to the cosmos. Farmers relied on the sun's position. Sailors navigated by the stars. Even within a home, the changing light outside the window signaled the progression of hours. Artificial light never completely obscured these celestial guides. So, the story of pre-electric lighting is not just a technological history, it is a sleep history. It is the story of how limited, warm-toned light sources gently guided humanity into a rhythm of rest that was perfectly aligned with their biological clocks. It created an environment where deep, restorative sleep was the natural outcome of the day's progression. As you reflect on these ancient glows, these humble flames and soft oil lamps, consider their gentle influence. They were not designed to extend the day indefinitely, but to provide just enough light for essential tasks, for communal gathering, and for a gradual, peaceful transition into the realm of sleep. They were companions in the dark, not conquerors of it. Allow the image of a single, flickering candle or a steady oil lamp to occupy your mind's eye. Observe its gentle radius of light, the soft shadows it casts, the quiet warmth it provides. Feel the slow, deliberate pace of life that such limited illumination would impose. There is a profound tranquility in this historical scene, a simplicity that stands in stark contrast to our always-on, brightly lit world. Let the warm, comforting thoughts of these ancient glows envelop you. There is no urgency in this light, no demand for vigilance. Only the soft invitation to observe, to understand, and to allow your own mind to drift towards the quiet darkness that brings true rest. The history of light, before the bulb, is a history of darkness, and a history of sleep. Welcome, once again, to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. Having explored the ancient rhythms of sleep and the subtle glows of early light, we now turn our attention to the auditory landscape of the past. the profound sounds, or often, the profound silence, that shaped the nights before the cacophony of the modern world. Tonight, we will immerse ourselves in nature's nocturnal symphony, a gentle exploration of the acoustic environment that cradled our ancestors into slumber. Imagine a night utterly devoid of artificial hums. No distant traffic, no electric motors, no refrigerator buzzing, no air conditioning drone. This was a world where sound traveled differently, where every natural rustle and distant cry carried more significance, a world where silence itself was a palpable presence, broken only by the timeless music of the earth and its creatures. The dominant soundscape of the ancient night was, for many, the wind. A gentle breeze rustling through leaves, creating a soft, continuous whisper. A stronger gust howling through trees, a deeper, more resonant sound that could be both comforting and, at times, a source of primal anxiety, signaling shifting weather or the movement of unseen forces. This constant, natural white noise served as a backdrop to sleep, a steady, rhythmic presence that could lull the mind into repose. The sound of wind, ancient and enduring, was a constant companion in the darkness. Closely intertwined with the wind was the sound of water. The gentle lapping of waves against a shore, the consistent murmur of a flowing river, the soft drip of water from a cave ceiling, or the distant rush of a waterfall. Water, in all its forms, provides a remarkably soothing auditory experience. Its rhythm is often predictable, its tone consistent, creating a natural, flowing soundscape perfect for relaxation. For communities living near rivers, lakes, or oceans, these aquatic sounds would have been the persistent lullaby of the night, a calming presence in the dark hours. Then, there were the sounds of the earth itself. The soft patter of rain on a leafy canopy, on a simple roof of thatch or hide. The rumble of distant thunder, a powerful, awe-inspiring sound that also spoke of vital rain and the cleansing of the atmosphere. Even the subtle creaks and groans of settling earth, the movement of stones, or the rustle of dry grass underfoot could be part of the nocturnal symphony. These were the fundamental, elemental sounds, reminders of humanity's deep connection to the planet. But perhaps the most distinct sounds of the pre-electric night were those of the nocturnal animals. The hoot of an owl echoing through the trees, a haunting yet often comforting sound signifying the presence of the familiar night hunter. The chirping of crickets and cicadas, a relentless, rhythmic chorus that intensified as darkness deepened, providing a natural, high-frequency hum that many find incredibly soothing. The distant howl of a wolf or coyote, a stark reminder of the wildness beyond the immediate human encampment, but also a sound that became normalized, a part of the expected night. Consider the calls of insects, the buzzing of beetles, the soft scuttling sounds of small mammals. These were not considered intrusive noises, but rather a part of the living, breathing environment. These familiar sounds often acted as a kind of natural alarm system. A sudden cessation of cricket song, or an unusual animal cry, could instantly signal danger, prompting vigilance. But when the familiar symphony continued uninterrupted, it often brought a sense of safety and reassurance, allowing deeper sleep. The very predictability of these sounds, once learned, fostered a sense of security. For early agricultural societies, the sounds of livestock would also have been present. The soft chewing of grazing animals, the occasional bleat of a sheep, the rustle of straw as animals shifted in their enclosures. These sounds, close to home, would have been familiar and calming, signifying the safety and presence of valuable resources. Even the human-made sounds of the night were different. There was the constant, soft crackling of fire, a sound that spoke of warmth, protection, and companionship. The rhythmic breathing of sleeping companions, a deep, resonant sound in the quiet of the night, offered a powerful sense of community and shared vulnerability. Perhaps the occasional hushed conversation during a period of segmented wakefulness, or the soft sounds of a tool being mended, or the grinding of grain, these were quiet, deliberate sounds that respected the deep silence of the surrounding darkness. The absence of constant artificial noise meant that human hearing was likely more acute, more attuned to subtle environmental cues. People would learn to distinguish the precise rustle of a predator from the gentle movement of wind-blown leaves. This heightened auditory awareness, while serving a survival purpose, also meant that the quiet periods were truly quiet, allowing the mind to naturally settle without overwhelming stimulation. The contrast between the active, often louder sounds of the day, the sounds of labor, of hunting, of social interaction, and the quieter, more ambient sounds of the night would have provided a clear, natural transition cue for the body and mind. As dusk fell, the world would audibly quieten, signaling the time for repose. This gradual reduction in sensory input was a vital part of the winding down process, a natural invitation to rest. Think about the importance of silence itself. In our modern lives, true silence is a rare commodity. Our ears are constantly assaulted by a background hum of technology, traffic, and distant voices. For our ancestors, true silence was often present, especially in remote areas or during quiet periods of the night. This deep silence allowed for internal reflection, for the mind to process the day without external distractions, and for the body to relax completely. It was within these periods of profound quiet that the mind could truly detach and enter the realm of dreams. The perception of noise was also vastly different. What we might consider natural background noise today, a bird singing outside a window, or the sound of distant rain, would have been the dominant sounds of ancient life. Disruptive noise would have been truly unusual and often indicative of danger. A sudden, unnatural crash, the distinct sound of an unknown animal approaching, or the agitated cries of a human. These were rare interruptions to the otherwise natural symphony. The acoustics of ancient dwellings also played a role. Simple huts, caves, or tents would transmit the sounds of the outside world more directly, while also containing the quiet sounds of their inhabitants. There were no insulated walls, no soundproofing. The environment was always present, always heard. This constant, direct connection to the natural world's soundscape fostered a different kind of auditory awareness, one that was deeply integrated with the experience of sleep. This gentle exposure to natural sounds, rather than the sharp, unpredictable noises of modern life, would have fostered a sense of safety and predictability that is highly conducive to sleep. The rhythm of nature's symphony, the consistent hum of insects, the steady flow of water, the cyclical calls of birds, provided a sonic blanket for the sleeping mind. There was an inherent order, a predictable flow to these sounds that allowed the brain to relax its vigilance. Consider the role of the night watchman, a common role in ancient towns or camps. Their vigilant listening, their ability to discern subtle changes in the nocturnal soundscape, was crucial for the safety of the sleeping community. Their quiet presence and the occasional, reassuring call would have been part of the human contribution to the night's soundscape, a gentle reminder that all was well. The absence of recorded music, of radios, of televisions, meant that the only music of the night was that provided by nature or by human voices in song or story. The very act of singing or storytelling around a fire would have been a shared, intimate experience, its sounds filling the immediate circle of light, then dissolving into the vast, silent darkness beyond. These were not sounds designed to keep one awake or entertained. They were often rhythmic, repetitive, and soothing, preparing the mind for rest. So, the night before electricity was a symphony, but a subtle one. It was a world where every rustle of leaves, every distant animal call, every drop of water, held meaning. It was a world where silence was not an absence, but a presence, a deep, resonant quiet that allowed the mind to unwind, the body to truly rest, and the senses to be acutely aware of the delicate balance of the natural world. Allow yourself to drift into this ancient quiet. Listen for the gentle whisper of the wind, the soft murmur of water, the distant, rhythmic calls of nocturnal creatures. Let these natural sounds become your own lullaby, guiding your thoughts away from any lingering distractions. In this profound quiet, our ancestors found their deepest rest, a rest unburdened by the constant noise of modern existence. Let that quiet now settle around you. The very air itself, carrying these natural sounds, felt different. Cleaner, perhaps, untainted by industrial emissions. This pure, unpolluted air, combined with the harmonious natural sounds, created an ideal environment for the body's physiological winding down. There was a holistic synergy between the environment and the human need for rest. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We've explored the ancient rhythms of sleep and the subtle glows and profound silences of pre-electric nights. Now, our attention turns to perhaps the most primal and comforting element of ancient nighttime life, fire. Tonight, we will settle by the metaphorical hearth and explore the fire's embrace, hearth, heat, and hypnosis, delving into how this elemental force served not just as a source of warmth and light, but as a central figure in the human ritual of winding down and preparing for sleep. Imagine, if you will, the profound significance of fire to our ancestors. It was not merely a tool, it was a companion, a protector, a focal point of existence after the sun had set. In a world of deep darkness and often bitter cold, fire offered a sanctuary, a literal warm heart in the vast, unforgiving night. The hearth, whether a simple pit in a cave floor or a more structured stone setting in a dwelling, was the undisputed center of nocturnal life. As dusk deepened, family groups or small communities would naturally gravitate towards its warmth. The day's labors would cease, and the evening's rituals would begin. This collective gathering around the fire was a powerful sensory experience, signaling to the body and mind that the active phase of the day was over. Let's first consider the warmth that fire provided. In climates that experienced significant drops in temperature after sunset, the fire was essential for survival and comfort. Sleeping without adequate warmth can be restless and unrefreshing. The gentle, radiating heat from a well-tended fire would slowly penetrate clothing and skin, relaxing muscles and easing tension. This physical comfort is a fundamental prerequisite for deep, restorative sleep. Imagine the feeling of settling down near a fire after a day of strenuous activity, the cold seeping from your limbs as the heat slowly envelops you. This sensation alone is deeply conducive to rest. Beyond simple warmth, fire offered protection. Its light, as we discussed in the previous chapter, pushed back the shadows, deterring nocturnal predators and bringing a sense of security to the immediate area. The crackling sounds and the flickering light would keep wild animals at a respectful distance. For humans, this meant a reduced state of vigilance, allowing for deeper, less interrupted sleep. The knowledge that the fire was burning, keeping watch, allowed the mind to relax its guard. Then there is the mesmerizing, almost hypnotic quality of flames. Observe a fire. The dance of the orange and yellow light, the shifting patterns, the subtle changes in intensity. The rhythmic crackle and pop of burning wood. These are inherently calming stimuli. Unlike the stark, unyielding glare of modern electric lights, firelight is dynamic, unpredictable, yet consistently soothing. Staring into a fire, allowing your gaze to soften, is a primal form of meditation. It allows thoughts to drift, worries to dissipate, and the mind to enter a more passive, receptive state. This visual and auditory rhythm is a powerful tool for inducing drowsiness. The act of tending the fire was also a ritual in itself. Feeding it with wood, stirring the embers, ensuring its longevity throughout the night. These were quiet, repetitive tasks that provided a focus without demanding intense mental effort. It was a rhythmic, almost meditative activity that could be performed during those periods of segmented wakefulness, ensuring the fire remained a constant source of comfort and security. This simple, purposeful engagement helped to keep the mind from racing, gently guiding it back towards rest. The smell of wood smoke also played a role. For those who lived with fire, this scent would have been deeply associated with home, safety, and the end of the day. It was a familiar, comforting aroma that permeated the air, signaling warmth and protection. Different woods, of course, produced different scents, but the underlying essence of wood smoke was a universal olfactory cue for evening and rest. Fire also shaped social interaction during the night. Gathered around the hearth, people would share stories, often in hushed tones, their faces illuminated by the dancing light. These were not typically boisterous gatherings designed to stimulate, rather, they were often intimate, reflective moments. The rhythm of storytelling, the shared silence, the communal presence, all fostered a sense of belonging and peace. The limited light encouraged closer proximity, a quiet intimacy that also contributed to relaxation. The very structure of ancient dwellings often revolved around the hearth. In many cultures, the central fire pit was not just for warmth but was a symbolic heart of the home. Sleeping areas would be arranged to benefit from its radiating heat, creating zones of comfort that drew inhabitants towards the warmth as night progressed. The smoke, managed through simple vents or openings, would clear, leaving behind a comforting, slightly smoky warmth within the dwelling. Consider the temperature gradient within a home around a fire. Nearest the fire, it was warmest. Further away, cooler. People would instinctively choose their resting spots based on their individual needs for warmth, perhaps shifting positions during the night to remain comfortable. This dynamic interaction with the heat source was part of the natural sleep experience. The presence of a burning fire throughout the night also meant a constant source of subtle, warm light. We discussed this in Chapter 2, but it bears repeating. This warm, orange-toned light is inherently beneficial for melatonin production. Unlike bright, blue-spectrum light, firelight prepares the body for sleep rather than disrupting it. Even if one were to wake during the night, the soft glow of embers would provide just enough illumination to navigate without fully shocking the system into wakefulness. The act of extinguishing the fire for the night, or letting it slowly die down to embers, was another signal that deep sleep was imminent. This deliberate transition from active flame to glowing embers marked the boundary between semi-wakefulness and deep slumber. The gradual reduction of light and heat was a final, gentle nudge towards unconsciousness. For nomadic groups, the communal campfire was even more critical. It was their movable hearth, their temporary sanctuary in a constantly changing environment. The routine of establishing the fire, gathering around it, and watching it burn down before sleeping would have been a deeply ingrained ritual, bringing predictability and comfort in an otherwise unpredictable existence. Even in agricultural societies, after the harvest was done, the long winter nights would be spent in closer proximity to the fire. It became the lifeblood of the home during the colder, darker months, its constant presence dictating the pace of indoor life and the duration of rest. The very rhythm of the seasons, in conjunction with the need for fire, shaped sleep patterns. So, the fire was far more than just a means to cook or stay warm. It was a multi-sensory anchor for the night. Its heat relaxed the body. Its light soothed the eyes. Its crackle calmed the mind. Its smoke scented the air. Its presence protected the community. All these elements combined to create an environment that was profoundly conducive to rest, a natural hypnotist that guided humanity into the depths of sleep for millennia. As you reflect on the ancient hearth, allow the gentle warmth of these thoughts to spread through you. Picture the dancing flames, feel the comforting heat, listen to the soft crackle of burning wood. Let the primal security of the fire's embrace envelop you, easing any tension, and drawing your mind towards a quiet, restful state. The ancient fire is still within us, a deep, comforting memory that can help us find our own paths to peaceful slumber. Let the image of the glowing embers, steadily radiating heat, be the final thought as you drift further into relaxation. There is a timeless wisdom in the fire's quiet strength, a wisdom that reminds us of the power of simple elements to bring profound rest. We've gently traced the natural rhythms of sleep, the subtle influence of pre-electric light, and the profound comfort of fire. Tonight, our journey brings us to another cornerstone of ancient repose, the deeply communal nature of sleep. We will delve into the communal cradle, sharing sleep in ancient societies, exploring how For much of human history, sleep was not a solitary act but a shared experience, offering both practical benefits and a unique sense of security and belonging. Imagine a night where you were rarely, if ever, truly alone in your slumber. For our ancestors, privacy as we understand it today was a luxury almost unknown, especially when it came to rest. From nomadic hunter-gatherer bands to early agricultural settlements and even into pre-industrial towns, people often slept in close proximity, sharing spaces, warmth, and the very act of vulnerability that sleep entails. The most fundamental reason for communal sleeping was safety and protection. In a world teeming with unknown threats, predators, rival groups, or simply the dangers of a dark, unfamiliar environment, there was strength in numbers, even in sleep. A group sleeping together could offer mutual vigilance. The slightest stir, a warning cry, or a sudden scent would alert not just one person, but many, increasing the chances of detecting and reacting to danger. Each individual became a subtle part of a collective early warning system. This shared watchfulness, even subconsciously, allowed for a deeper sense of security than sleeping alone could ever provide. Beyond direct protection, there was the crucial element of shared warmth. Before modern heating systems, bodies huddled together were an effective and essential way to conserve heat, particularly in colder climates or during winter nights. Imagine a family, or even an extended kin group, nestled together under shared furs or simple blankets, each body radiating warmth to the others. This physical closeness provided a natural, living insulation, crucial for comfort and survival during long, cold nights. The collective body heat created a microclimate of warmth within the sleeping area. This physical proximity also fostered immense social cohesion and bonding. Sleeping together reinforced family ties, community bonds, and a sense of shared identity. It was a daily ritual that reaffirmed belonging. The rhythmic breathing of others, the subtle movements, the reassuring presence, all contributed to a feeling of being connected and secure. It built trust and familiarity. Children, in particular, would have benefited from sleeping close to their parents and other family members, feeling safe and protected. The communal cradle truly encompassed the entire sleeping group. Think about the structure of ancient homes or shelters. Often, they were single-room dwellings, or perhaps had very few distinct sleeping areas. Everyone slept in the same space, whether on mats on the floor around a central hearth, or on simple, shared platforms. There were no separate bedrooms for each individual or couple as is common in many modern societies. The concept of individual, personal space, during sleep was a relatively recent development in human history, largely emerging with changes in architecture and social norms driven by industrialization and the rise of the nuclear family. This meant that the sounds of sleep were also shared. The gentle breathing, the occasional snore, the soft murmurs or movements of others. These were not considered disruptions but rather the ambient background of a sleeping community. They were familiar sounds that, paradoxically, often contributed to a sense of safety and normality. A sudden, unfamiliar silence, rather than the sound itself, might have been the true cause for alarm. The communal aspect extended to the segmented sleep pattern we discussed earlier. During those periods of natural wakefulness in the middle of the night, people were not necessarily alone. They might wake simultaneously, or one might stir and quietly tend to the fire while others continued to rest. This allowed for hushed conversations, quiet contemplation, or shared stories by the embers, fostering unique nocturnal social interactions that are largely absent in our individualistic modern sleep routines. These were shared moments of quiet vigilance or gentle bonding. Consider the implications for different age groups. Children would naturally learn their sleep rhythms from the collective. They would fall asleep with the sounds and presence of their family, and wake with them. There was no pressure for a child to sleep through the night, in isolation, but rather to adapt to the communal rhythm. Elders, too, would be integrated into the sleeping group, their presence offering wisdom and experience, and their care needs met within the collective. Even in more advanced ancient civilizations, communal sleeping remained common. In Roman homes, while the wealthy might have had individual rooms, it was not uncommon for servants, slaves, and even family members to share sleeping quarters. In medieval Europe, entire families often slept in the main room of a small house, or in large halls of castles, where various retainers might share bedding on the floor. Beds were sometimes large enough for multiple people. Privacy, as a concept, was often subordinate to practical needs and communal bonds. This constant presence of others during sleep meant a different kind of vulnerability. One had to trust those around them. This necessity fostered strong social ties and a collective responsibility for the well-being of the group. The feeling of being part of a larger unit, of not being utterly alone in the darkness, could be profoundly comforting. The transition from these communal sleep patterns to increasingly individualized sleep spaces is a relatively recent historical phenomenon, driven by changing architectural styles, the rise of nuclear families, evolving concepts of privacy, and ultimately, the advent of artificial light and centralized heating. Once it became safe and practical to sleep alone, the communal aspect slowly began to recede for many, though it still persists in various forms in some cultures today. However, even with the shift, something profound was potentially lost. The innate sense of security from shared vigilance, the simple comfort of collective body warmth, and the deep, constant reinforcement of social bonds through shared vulnerability. Our ancestors found a fundamental peace in this shared repose, a peace that might be harder to achieve when we retreat into isolated bedrooms, surrounded by silence or artificial noise. As you reflect on these ancient sleeping arrangements, allow the idea of communal rest to settle gently in your mind. Imagine the feeling of being surrounded by the quiet presence of others, their breaths rising and falling in unison with your own. Feel the shared warmth, the collective security, and the profound sense of belonging that such an environment would foster. There is a deep, primal comfort in the thought of being cradled within a community, even in the depths of sleep. Let the image of these communal sleeping spaces, warm and secure in the deep night, guide your thoughts towards a sense of connection and peace. There is a wisdom in sharing the vulnerability of sleep, a wisdom that has sustained humanity for millennia. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have gently traversed the ancient rhythms of sleep, the soft glows of early light, the profound silences of nature's symphony, and the comforting embrace of communal rest. Tonight, we turn our attention inward, exploring the fundamental biological mechanism that governed our ancestors' sleep, the body's internal clock, and its intrinsic, effortless synchronization with the ultimate celestial timepiece, the sun. This is a story of natural harmony, of a biological rhythm undisturbed by the artificial complexities of modern life. Imagine, for a moment, a human being living completely in tune with their environment, their very physiology responding directly to the daily and seasonal cycles of light and dark. This was the reality for virtually all of human history before the widespread advent of electricity. Our ancestors were living examples of perfect circadian rhythm in action. The circadian rhythm is, quite simply, a natural, internal process that regulates the sleep-wake cycle and repeats roughly every 24 hours. It's an innate biological clock that influences not just when we feel sleepy or awake, but also our body temperature, hormone release, and other bodily functions. For millennia, this clock was primarily set and reset by a single, powerful external cue, light. Specifically, the rising and falling of natural light from the sun. As the sun began its ascent in the morning, even before it fully breached the horizon, the increasing ambient light would penetrate the thin skin of the eyelids, even if they were closed. This light signal would travel through the optic nerves to a small region in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, often referred to as the body's master clock. This signal would immediately begin to suppress the production of melatonin, the hormone primarily responsible for inducing sleepiness. Think about that moment of waking in the ancient world. There was no jarring alarm. Instead, it was a gradual, gentle awakening orchestrated by the sun. As melatonin levels dropped, the body would naturally begin its shift into a state of alertness and readiness for activity. The light would stimulate the production of other hormones, like cortisol, which helped to energize the body and prepare it for the day's demands. This was a smooth, physiological transition from the depths of rest to active wakefulness. Throughout the day, exposure to natural daylight, especially bright morning light, acted as a constant Zeitgeber, a German term meaning time giver. This consistent exposure to varying intensities and spectrums of natural light reinforced the circadian clock, keeping it precisely calibrated. The eyes, unhindered by artificial blue light for extended periods, were perfectly adapted to absorbing and interpreting these natural signals. Our ancestors spent virtually all their waking hours outdoors or in dwellings with natural light filtering in, ensuring their brains received consistent, strong time cues. As the afternoon waned and the sun began its descent, the spectrum of natural light would subtly shift. The harsh blue and white light of midday would soften, becoming warmer, more orange and red toned. This reduction in blue light, naturally occurring as evening approached, was another critical signal. It would begin to allow the brain to gradually increase melatonin production. Imagine the physiological shift as dusk settled. The eyes, registering the fading light, would send signals to the SCN, which in turn would initiate the release of melatonin. This hormone would slowly build up in the bloodstream, gently ushering in feelings of drowsiness and preparing the body for sleep. This was a natural, effortless slide into evening repose, unforced and perfectly timed by nature itself. There was no need for blackout curtains, no concern about bright screens. The environment itself was the ultimate sleep aid. The biphasic, or segmented, sleep pattern that was common in ancient times was also deeply rooted in this natural light cycle. The long hours of profound darkness, often exceeding 8 or 9 hours in winter, provided ample opportunity for two distinct sleep phases separated by a period of quiet wakefulness. The first sleep would often align with the initial peak of melatonin, and the second sleep would occur as melatonin levels naturally started to decline but were still sufficient for rest, leading into the gentle awakening with the dawn. Even the seasons played a profound role in this synchronization. In winter, with fewer hours of daylight and more hours of darkness, the body's internal clock would naturally adjust. People might sleep for longer periods, or spend more time in quiet repose during the extended night. In summer, with longer days, sleep periods might be slightly shorter, aligning with the available darkness. This flexibility was not a sign of disordered sleep, but a healthy, adaptive response to the natural world. Our ancestors lived through many more light cycles in their lives than we do today, truly experiencing the full spectrum of light and dark throughout the year. The absence of any significant blue light exposure after dark was paramount. Without electric lights, and certainly without backlit screens from phones or computers, the only artificial light sources were fire, oil lamps, or candles. As we discussed, these emit a warm, orange-red spectrum of light, which does not disrupt melatonin production. This meant that the body's natural signaling for sleep was never overridden by artificial stimulation. The signals from the environment were always clear and consistent. Bright light meant wakefulness, dim warm light or darkness meant sleep. The physical demands of daily life also reinforced this natural rhythm. Days spent in hunting, gathering, farming, or building were physically taxing. The body would accumulate a significant sleep debt through exertion, leading to a strong, natural inclination towards sleep when the environmental conditions, the darkness and the accompanying rise in melatonin, signaled it was time. There was less mental overstimulation and more physical exhaustion, which is a powerful driver of deep sleep. This deep synchronization meant that our ancestors rarely, if ever, experienced the sleep disorders common today that stem from circadian disruption, chronic insomnia, sleep phase disorders, or the struggle to fall asleep despite fatigue. Their bodies knew, instinctively and physiologically, when it was time to be awake and when it was time to rest. The gentle progression of their days and nights was a direct reflection of this internal clock in harmony with the sun. From the rising of the sun, signaling the start of activity, to its midday peak, marking the height of energy, to its slow descent, ushering in the natural wind down, and finally, to the deep darkness that invited profound rest. This was a seamless, effortless dance between biology and environment. As you reflect on the powerful simplicity of this ancient synchronization, allow your own body to remember its innate connection to the sun. Imagine your internal clock gently recalibrating, aligning itself with the natural world's timeless rhythm. There is a profound peace in surrendering to this ancient wisdom, allowing the natural light and darkness to guide your journey into rest. Let the warm thought of the setting sun, its gentle light signaling the approach of repose, settle softly in your mind. Feel the natural urge to slow down, to quiet your thoughts, and to prepare for your own restorative slumber, just as countless generations before you did, guided by the sun. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have explored the natural rhythms of sleep, the influence of pre-electric light, the sounds of nature, the comfort of fire, the warmth of communal rest, and the body's intrinsic clock. Tonight, we turn to a dimension of ancient sleep that transcends the purely physical, the profound spiritual and mystical significance of dreams. We will delve into dreams and divination, the spiritual side of ancient sleep, exploring how, for much of human history, the realm of sleep was considered a gateway to other worlds, a channel for divine communication, and a source of guidance and prophecy. Imagine a world where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual were far more fluid than they often appear to us today. For our ancestors, when the conscious mind surrendered to sleep, it was not merely a period of unconsciousness or biological restoration. It was often viewed as a time when the soul or spirit could journey, when communication with ancestors, deities, or the unseen forces of the cosmos became possible. Dreams were not random neurological firings, they were messages, insights, and often, profound revelations. Across countless ancient cultures, from Mesopotamia and Egypt to Greece, Rome, and indigenous societies around the globe, dream interpretation was a highly respected practice. Dream interpreters held significant social and religious power, often serving kings, pharaohs, and tribal leaders. They were seen as conduits to wisdom, able to unlock the hidden meanings of the night's visions. The ability to interpret dreams was considered a sacred art, vital for decision-making, understanding omens, and even diagnosing illness. Consider the ancient Egyptians, who believed dreams were messages from the gods or from the deceased. They had special dream temples where people would go to sleep, hoping to receive divine guidance or healing in their dreams. Priests would then help interpret these visions, which were often recorded on papyrus scrolls. The act of sleeping in such sacred spaces was itself a ritual, a conscious invitation for spiritual communion. The transition into sleep, in this context, was a deliberate, purposeful crossing into a different state of being. In ancient Greece, temples dedicated to Asclepius, the god of medicine, were places where the sick would incubate, sleep in sacred dormitories, hoping for a dream visit from the god or his serpents, which would reveal the cure for their ailments. The dream itself was the diagnosis, and its interpretation the prescription. The quiet, reverent atmosphere of these temples, combined with the power of belief, would undoubtedly have facilitated a restful, dream-filled sleep. The Old Testament of the Bible is replete with examples of prophetic dreams, where God communicates directly with individuals like Jacob, Joseph, and Daniel, revealing future events or providing divine instruction. These dreams were not dismissed as mere imagination but were treated with utmost seriousness, influencing the course of history and the lives of nations. The very act of sleeping became a receptive state for divine intervention. For many indigenous cultures, dreams were, and often still are, understood as journeys of the soul or spirit. During sleep, the spirit might leave the body, travel to different realms, interact with animal spirits, or communicate with ancestors. The information gained during these dream journeys was considered real and vital knowledge, influencing waking life, hunting decisions, and social dynamics. Shamans, in particular, would often enter trance-like states, blurring the line between waking and dreaming, to gain insights for their communities. The content of dreams, whether symbolic visions, direct messages, or encounters with beings from other realms, was taken seriously. There were extensive traditions for analyzing common dream symbols, understanding recurring motifs, and discerning the true meaning behind the often cryptic narratives of the sleeping mind. This constant engagement with dream content meant that the act of dreaming itself was integrated into the waking life, not compartmentalized. This reverence for dreams profoundly shaped the experience of ancient sleep. It meant that sleep was not just a passive state, it was an active gateway. There might have been rituals performed before sleep to invite prophetic dreams, or to protect the dreamer from malevolent spirits. People might have consciously prepared their minds and bodies for the journey into the dream world, perhaps through meditation, prayer, or specific dietary practices. The quiet, unlit nights, free from the constant external stimulation of modern life, might have naturally fostered a richer, more vivid dream life. Without the distractions of artificial light and noise, the mind might have had more space and deeper stillness to generate and remember dreams. The deep darkness and silence created a fertile ground for the subconscious to manifest its visions. Consider also the absence of modern psychology and neuroscience. Lacking a scientific framework to explain dreams, ancient societies often turned to spiritual and supernatural explanations. This framework made dreams incredibly powerful and meaningful, imbuing the entire sleep experience with a sense of wonder and profound significance. The very act of closing one's eyes was to step into a realm of mystery and potential revelation. Even the segmented sleep pattern could have played a role. Waking in the middle of the night, in the deep silence, might have been an ideal time to recall and reflect upon dreams from the first sleep, or to engage in quiet contemplation that might itself induce specific types of dreams during the second sleep. The mind, fresh from its first repose, but still immersed in the nocturnal atmosphere, might have been particularly receptive to interpreting its visions. The act of sharing dreams within a community was also important. Dreams could be recounted around the fire, discussed with elders, or interpreted by specialized individuals. This communal sharing solidified the importance of dreams and integrated them into the social fabric, ensuring that the insights gained in the sleeping realm were brought back and applied to waking life. So, for our ancestors, sleep was never just about closing their eyes and resting their bodies. It was often a sacred journey, a communion with the unseen, a vital source of knowledge and guidance. The dreams that emerged from the depths of their slumber were not fleeting images but profound messages, shaping their understanding of the world, their decisions, and their spiritual lives. As you reflect on these ancient beliefs, allow your own mind to acknowledge the profound mystery of dreams. Consider the possibility that sleep is more than just physical rest, that it is indeed a gateway to deeper levels of consciousness or connection. Let this ancient reverence for dreams gently guide your own thoughts as you prepare for your own slumber, open to whatever quiet insights the night may bring. Let the lingering thought of ancient mystics, quietly interpreting symbols by flickering firelight, infuse your mind with a sense of calm wonder. The realm of dreams, unburdened by modern skepticism, was a vibrant, meaningful landscape, a place of constant revelation in the heart of the deepest night. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have explored the natural rhythms of sleep, the subtle glows of early light, the profound sounds and silences, the comforting fire, the security of communal rest, and the body's intrinsic clock and the spiritual significance of dreams. Tonight, we turn to a more challenging aspect of ancient nights, the inherent dangers of darkness, and the necessity of vigilance that shaped how our ancestors found their rest. We will delve into the dangers of darkness, threats and vigilance in the night, exploring the real and imagined perils that loomed once the sun had set, and how humanity adapted its sleep patterns to survive in a world where night brought genuine risks. Imagine a world where the vast, unlit expanse beyond the immediate circle of firelight held genuine, tangible threats. For our ancestors, darkness was not merely the absence of light, it was often the presence of peril. This reality profoundly influenced where, how, and with whom they chose to sleep. The most immediate and obvious danger was predators. Before the widespread domestication of animals and the clearing of vast forests, human settlements were often close to the habitats of large, dangerous animals. Wolves, bears, big cats, and other nocturnal hunters would roam under the cover of darkness. The night was their domain. Sleeping unprotected, or even within a flimsy shelter, carried a real risk of attack. This constant, underlying threat necessitated a certain degree of innate vigilance, even during sleep. The slightest unfamiliar sound, a change in wind direction carrying a new scent, could trigger an immediate awakening. Beyond animal threats, there were human threats. In a world without organized police forces or widespread rule of law, the cover of night offered opportunities for raiding parties, rival tribes, or individual attackers. Theft, abduction, or violence could occur under the cloak of darkness. This made the concept of a night watch, or designated guards, a critical element of many ancient communities. Someone had to remain alert, even if only partially, to detect approaching danger. The presence of these watchful individuals, often stationed at the edges of the sleeping area, would have provided a crucial layer of psychological, as well as physical, security for those in repose. The elements themselves posed dangers. Sudden storms, flash floods in river valleys, or extreme cold could become life-threatening under the cover of darkness, especially for those without adequate shelter. The unpredictability of weather, combined with limited visibility, meant that awareness of environmental shifts was paramount. A change in wind, the sudden drop in temperature, or the first drops of rain on a clear night could demand immediate action, disrupting sleep. Then there were the more subtle, but equally dangerous, threats like falls or accidents. Navigating a rough, unlit terrain in the dead of night was perilous. A misstep could lead to injury, a fall into water, or getting lost. This danger limited mobility and encouraged people to remain within the safety of their camp or dwelling once darkness had truly set in. The incentive to stay put and rest was very strong. The fear of the unknown also played a powerful role. Even if no immediate physical threat was present, the vast, profound darkness could evoke primal fears. What lurked just beyond the firelight? What unseen spirits or mythical creatures might stir in the shadows? These cultural beliefs and superstitions, while not always physically real, contributed to a psychological landscape where night was often a time of apprehension. This psychological vigilance, the subtle background hum of caution, would have been an ever-present companion to sleep. Dreams themselves, as discussed in the previous chapter, sometimes became a channel for processing these fears. This pervasive sense of danger naturally influenced sleeping habits. It contributed strongly to the practice of communal sleeping, as discussed earlier. More bodies meant more senses to detect threats, and more individuals to mount a defense. It encouraged sleeping close to the fire, whose light and warmth deterred both animals and, symbolically, malevolent spirits. It also led to the development of more robust shelters, caves, walled compounds, or dwellings with reinforced doors, specifically designed to keep dangers out once the residents had retired for the night. The segmented sleep pattern itself might have offered a survival advantage. Waking naturally in the middle of the night, perhaps to tend the fire, also provided an opportunity for a period of conscious vigilance. During this quiet interlude, a person could listen intently to the sounds of the night, assess the safety of their surroundings, and ensure all was well before drifting back into their second sleep. This brief period of wakeful awareness was a natural checkpoint for safety. Even the simple act of choosing a sleeping spot was crucial. Our ancestors would instinctively seek elevated ground, protected nooks, or areas with clear lines of sight to potential approaches. These were not just about comfort, they were about defensive positioning. A good sleeping spot minimized vulnerability. The sensory acuity of our ancestors would have been highly developed for survival in the dark. Their hearing, as discussed in Chapter 3, would be finely tuned to distinguish harmless natural sounds from the subtle cues of danger. Their sense of smell could detect the presence of an animal or a stranger long before sight was possible. This heightened sensory awareness, while stressful in some ways, was also an integral part of their sleep security system. The development of basic fortifications around settlements, even simple palisades or thorny fences, reflects this constant awareness of nighttime vulnerability. These were not just to keep out rivals during the day, but to provide a secure perimeter for the sleeping community at night. The gate of a walled town would be closed and guarded rigorously after dark. So, while ancient nights offered profound peace and connection to nature, they also presented very real threats that could not be ignored. This duality meant that sleep was never a complete surrender to unconsciousness without a trace of underlying awareness. A subtle vigilance, a quiet readiness for danger, remained part of the human experience of rest. This inherent cautiousness, honed over millennia, is still present in our biology, influencing how some of us respond to unfamiliar sounds in the night, or why we might startle easily from a deep sleep. As you reflect on these ancient dangers, allow the sense of security you now possess to deepen. Appreciate the relative safety of your modern sleeping environment, a luxury that countless generations before you could only dream of. Let the knowledge of their vigilance allow you to surrender more completely to your own peaceful slumber, knowing that the ancient watchfulness has paved the way for your current safety. Let the lingering thought of ancient guards, quietly observing the profound darkness from the edge of a firelit camp, bring a final, reassuring sense of peace. Their watchfulness allowed others to rest, and their legacy of vigilance ensures a deeper appreciation for the tranquility of our own nights. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have explored the natural rhythms of sleep, the influences of light and sound, the comfort of fire, the security of communal rest, the body's intrinsic clock, the spiritual significance of dreams, and the ever-present dangers of darkness. Tonight, we turn our attention to the deliberate actions our ancestors took each evening to prepare for sleep, the rhythm of rituals. We will delve into evening practices for rest, exploring how specific, often unwritten, routines and customs served as powerful signals to the body and mind, guiding them gently from the day's activity into the profound peace of the night. Imagine a world where the concept of winding down was not a conscious effort against external distractions, but an intrinsic part of the daily flow. Our ancestors, lacking artificial means to extend the day, relied on predictable patterns of behavior to signal the approaching time for rest. These patterns, repeated day after day, became powerful cues, conditioning the body and mind to anticipate and embrace sleep. One of the most universal and fundamental evening rituals was the preparation and consumption of the last meal of the day. As the sun began its descent, the focus would shift to the evening meal, often simpler and lighter than the midday feast. Gathering ingredients, preparing the food, and sharing it with family or community members was a central part of the evening. This act of communal eating, often by the dwindling light of the sun or the flickering fire, marked a definitive end to the day's active labor. The body, having received its sustenance, would begin the digestive process, a natural physiological activity that diverts energy and promotes a sense of fullness and calm, making it conducive to rest. There was no late-night snacking, no constant availability of food to disrupt the body's natural rhythms. Following the evening meal, there was often a period of social gathering and storytelling around the fire. We touched upon this in earlier chapters, but it bears repeating in the context of ritual. This was a time for recounting the day's events, sharing wisdom, teaching younger generations, or simply engaging in quiet conversation. The stories told were often repetitive, rhythmic, and familiar, oral traditions passed down through generations. The act of listening to these narratives, in the warm glow of the firelight, would be a deeply soothing and engaging activity, drawing the mind away from daily worries and into a state of imaginative calm. The gentle cadence of voices, the shared focus, created a collective sense of peace. Another critical ritual was the tending of the fire for the night. This wasn't merely a chore, it was a deliberate act of preparing the sleeping environment. Adding logs to ensure warmth throughout the night, raking embers, or carefully covering the fire to preserve coals for the morning. These slow, deliberate actions created a gentle rhythm. The visual changes of the fire, from active flame to glowing embers, acted as a physical representation of the transition from day to night, from wakefulness to rest. The sustained presence of the fire, as discussed, offered both warmth and security, allowing for deeper relaxation. The preparation of the sleeping space was also a ritual. This might involve simply laying out furs or woven mats on the ground, or adjusting simple bedding within a hut or cave. In more developed societies, it could include rolling out simple mattresses or adjusting coverings. These simple, repetitive actions of preparing one's bed, performed in the dimming light, signaled to the body that it was time to transition into the state of rest. There was a direct, physical connection to the act of preparing for sleep. For many cultures, particularly those with strong spiritual or religious beliefs, evening prayers or rituals of gratitude were common. Facing the setting sun, offering thanks for the day's provisions, or invoking protection for the night. These practices provided a sense of spiritual closure to the day and a comforting reassurance for the hours of darkness. The meditative aspect of prayer, the quiet reflection, would naturally calm the mind and prepare it for deep repose. This spiritual grounding provided a final layer of mental peace before sleep. Even the simple act of physical hygiene, though far less elaborate than modern routines, would have been a ritual. Perhaps a quick wash of hands and face in cold water, or brushing hair. These simple cleansing acts were small rituals of transition, signaling a shift from the active, often dusty or smoky day to the purity of rest. The sounds of the night also became part of the ritual. As the human activities quieted, the natural symphony of crickets, owls, and wind would become more prominent. Listening to these sounds, consciously or subconsciously, became part of the winding down process, connecting the individual to the larger, natural world that was preparing for its own rest. The acceptance of these ambient sounds as normal and calming was an integral part of the evening's rhythm. The very limited nature of artificial light enforced these rituals. As firelight provided the main illumination, activities were inherently restricted. There was no temptation to continue working or engaging in stimulating entertainment late into the night. The natural fading of light compelled a slowing down, a cessation of complex tasks, and a retreat into the more intimate, quiet activities around the hearth. This environmental constraint was a powerful ritual in itself, dictating the rhythm of the evening. These daily, often unconscious, rituals created a powerful habit loop for sleep. The body and mind learned to associate these specific actions and sensory cues with the imminent onset of sleep. Just as a child learns to associate a bedtime story with sleep, so too did ancient humans associate the evening meal, the shared stories, the fire tending, and the dimming light with the journey into repose. This deep conditioning made falling asleep a far more effortless and natural process. Unlike our modern struggles with sleep hygiene, which often involve conscious efforts to disconnect from stimulating technologies, our ancestors' sleep rituals were organically integrated into their daily lives. They were not practices designed to fight wakefulness, but rather to facilitate a natural transition into rest. They were a flowing, unbroken sequence of events that naturally culminated in sleep. As you reflect on these ancient evening rituals, consider how the deliberate acts of slowing down, connecting with nature, and preparing your environment can influence your own rest. There is a profound wisdom in these simple, repetitive practices, a wisdom that can help us reclaim a more effortless and restorative journey into sleep. Allow the thought of these age-old customs, the shared meal, the storytelling, the quiet tending of the fire, to settle gently in your mind. Let them guide your own body and spirit towards a state of peaceful readiness for your own deep slumber. The rhythm of these ancient rituals continues to echo through time, offering a blueprint for a more harmonious relationship with the night. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have journeyed through the ancient rhythms of sleep, the influences of light, the symphony of natural sounds, the comfort of fire, the security of communal rest, the body's intrinsic clock, the spiritual significance of dreams, the vigilance against darkness, and the soothing power of evening rituals. Tonight, we gently shift our focus to the other side of slumber, the ancient art of waking. We will explore waking with the world, the dawn chorus and morning routines, delving into how our ancestors emerged from the profound quiet of the night, guided by the subtle cues of the awakening natural world, and how their morning rituals prepared them for the day ahead. Imagine a world without the jarring sound of an alarm clock. A world where your awakening was not a sudden shock, but a gradual, organic process, orchestrated by the subtle, yet powerful, signals of the environment. This was the universal experience of waking for millennia. The most prominent and consistent natural alarm clock for our ancestors was the dawn chorus. As the first hint of light, a faint gray, appeared on the eastern horizon, long before the sun itself was visible, the birds would begin to sing. A few tentative chirps at first, then a swelling symphony of calls and songs as the light intensified. This biological phenomenon, repeated faithfully every morning, was a fundamental signal to the sleeping world that the long night was receding and a new day was about to begin. Think about the quality of this awakening. It was not abrupt. The bird song began softly, gradually increasing in volume and complexity. This gentle escalation of sound would slowly pull the sleeper from the depths of their rest, from deep sleep, through lighter stages, and eventually towards full consciousness. This was a transition, not an interruption. The body's melatonin levels would be naturally falling as the light increased, making this awakening process feel effortless and aligned with internal physiology. As the light continued to grow, filtering into dwellings, it would provide the ultimate visual cue. The human eye, sensitive to even subtle changes in illumination, would register the increasing brightness. This natural light exposure, particularly the blue spectrum light present in daylight, would powerfully suppress any remaining melatonin, signaling to the brain that it was time to be fully alert and active. This was the final, undeniable call to begin the day. Beyond the sensory cues of light and sound, the natural needs of the body also played a significant role in waking. The body, having completed its cycles of rest, would feel refreshed and naturally ready for activity. The need for food and water, after many hours without sustenance, would also prompt awakening. There was an inherent biological drive to rise with the sun, to seek warmth, and to begin the vital tasks of foraging, hunting, or tending crops. The morning chill would also contribute to awakening, especially in colder climates. As the fire dwindled to embers overnight, the interior of the dwelling would cool. This drop in temperature, particularly as dawn approached, would make lying still less comfortable and encourage movement and rising to seek warmth. This gentle discomfort, rather than being an annoyance, was a natural cue. Upon waking, the first routines would begin. One of the primary tasks would be to rekindle the fire. This meant carefully coaxing the glowing embers back to life with kindling and fresh fuel, or starting a new fire if the old one had completely died out. This activity, performed in the dim morning light, was purposeful and engaging, helping to fully shake off the last vestiges of sleep. The act of bringing fire back to life was symbolic of bringing the day back to life. Soon after, the preparation of the morning meal would commence. Foraging for new food, preparing simple grains, or consuming leftovers from the previous evening. This would be a communal activity, the smells of food preparation slowly filling the air, drawing everyone towards the warmth and sustenance of the hearth. The act of breaking the fast, sharing food, provided energy and signaled the formal beginning of the day's active period. The communal nature of ancient life meant that waking was also a shared experience. One person stirring might gently rouse others. The sounds of early morning activity, the rustle of preparing bedding, the hushed voices, the crackle of a rekindled fire, would create a gentle collective awakening. There was no isolation in waking. It was a shared emergence into the new day, reinforcing the bonds of family and community. Physical preparation for the day would follow. Simple hygiene, perhaps a quick wash in a nearby stream or basin, stretching, and preparing tools or implements for the day's tasks. Dressing in simple, practical clothing. These were often swift, efficient routines, driven by the immediate needs of survival and productivity. The transition from the deep stillness of the night to the active bustle of the day was gradual. There was no immediate expectation to be fully productive and alert from the moment of waking. The morning hours allowed for a slow ramp-up of activity, a time for the body and mind to fully engage with the tasks ahead. This unhurried start to the day likely contributed to a lower level of stress and a greater sense of well-being. The cycle of daily life then began anew, dictated by the sun's progress. Activities like hunting, gathering, farming, or craft making would commence as the sun rose higher, providing ample light and warmth. This natural rhythm meant that energy levels were in sync with demands, the body was refreshed from natural sleep and ready for physical exertion. Even the experience of light was different upon waking. Instead of the artificial brightness of an electric bulb, the light would gradually increase from soft gray, to pink and orange hues, to the clear, bright light of full daylight. This gentle progression of natural light would be far less jarring to the eyes and brain, promoting a more natural and comfortable transition to wakefulness. So, the ancient way of waking was a symphony of natural cues, the subtle shifts in light, the crescendo of the dawn chorus, the changing temperature, and the body's innate readiness. It was a testament to humanity's deep integration with the natural world, a rhythm that ensured a gentle, refreshing emergence from sleep and a harmonious start to each new day. As you reflect on these ancient awakenings, allow yourself to imagine a morning where the world itself gently calls you awake. Listen for the subtle sounds of life beginning around you. Let the thought of a soft, natural emergence from sleep guide your own body and mind towards a calm, unhurried start to your day. There is a profound peace in aligning with the Earth's natural rhythm of awakening. Let the final image be that of the rising sun, its golden rays slowly illuminating the landscape, inviting all living things to awaken and begin anew. This timeless cycle, observed and lived by our ancestors, offers a blueprint for a more serene and natural start to our own days. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have laid the foundational understanding of natural sleep rhythms, light, sound, communal living, and morning and evening rituals. Tonight, we embark on a journey across ancient lands, focusing on specific civilizations to understand how their unique cultures and environments shaped the experience of sleep. Our destination: the cradle of civilization itself, the Fertile Crescent, home to ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. We will delve into sleep across the sands, ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian rest, exploring how these foundational societies approached sleep, comfort, and the nighttime realm, profoundly influencing subsequent cultures. Imagine the hot, arid climate of these regions. The scorching sun of the day made the cool embrace of night even more vital and welcome. For the people living along the life-giving rivers of the Nile, the Tigris, and the Euphrates, the rhythm of day and night was not just a biological cycle, but a deeply integrated part of their sophisticated agricultural and spiritual lives. Let's begin with ancient Egypt. The Egyptians, known for their meticulous record-keeping and profound spiritual beliefs, viewed sleep as a significant state, closely intertwined with the divine and the afterlife. They understood the restorative power of sleep, recognizing its necessity for both physical health and spiritual well-being. Their dwellings, often constructed from mud brick, were designed to offer respite from the intense daytime heat. Thick walls and small windows helped to keep interiors cool during the day, making them comfortable for rest at night. Sleeping areas were typically simple, often consisting of woven mats laid on the floor, or low wooden frames topped with mats, cloth, or even air-filled linen sacks for the wealthy. Pillows were often made of wood or stone, shaped to support the neck rather than the head, designed to promote air circulation in the heat and perhaps to prevent insects from crawling into the ears. While seemingly uncomfortable to modern sensibilities, these provided practical support in a hot climate. The Egyptians, like many ancient peoples, likely practiced segmented sleep. The long, hot days would lead to natural fatigue, and the cooler evenings would invite early repose. The lack of pervasive artificial light meant that once the sun set, activities would naturally wind down. The quiet cool of the night, broken only by natural sounds or the occasional murmur of the river, would be conducive to deep rest. However, for the Egyptians, sleep was not just about the body. It was a crucial pathway for the soul, Ba and Ka, to journey. They believed that during sleep, the soul could leave the body and travel to other realms, including the afterlife or the world of the gods. This belief gave dreams immense significance. As we touched on in Chapter 7, dream interpretation was a sacred art. Dream books were compiled, detailing symbols and their meanings, often used by priests to advise pharaohs and commoners alike. Special dream temples existed where people would sleep to seek divine guidance through visions. This spiritual dimension elevated sleep from a mere biological necessity to a sacred experience. Light sources in ancient Egypt were primarily oil lamps, fueled by oils such as castor or sesame oil, and later, tallow candles. These provided a warm, dim light, sufficient for quiet evening activities but never enough to extend the day significantly. This limited light naturally guided people towards rest once their evening rituals, such as sharing meals and perhaps offerings to deities, were complete. The flickering flame of an oil lamp, casting long shadows on hieroglyph-decorated walls, would be the last visual cue before deep sleep. Moving eastward to Mesopotamia, the lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, home to the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, we find a similar respect for the night and its implications for rest. Like Egypt, Mesopotamia was a hot climate, and the cool of the night was highly valued. Mesopotamian homes, often built with mud brick, were similarly designed for thermal comfort. Sleeping arrangements would have been straightforward, mats on the floor or low beds. In a communal household, family members would sleep together in a main room, sharing warmth and security, much like the patterns discussed in Chapter 5. The absence of private bedrooms for common folk was the norm. For Mesopotamians, dreams were also highly significant, often viewed as omens or messages from the gods. Kings and commoners alike sought meaning in their dreams, and scribes meticulously recorded dream narratives and their interpretations. Bad dreams could be cause for alarm, prompting rituals or prayers to avert misfortune. Good dreams, conversely, could inspire confidence and guide actions. This belief system meant that the state of sleep was not taken lightly, it was a vulnerable yet potentially powerful gateway to understanding the divine will. The sounds of the Mesopotamian night would include the distant calls of desert animals, the gentle flow of the rivers, and the quiet murmurs of family within mud brick walls. These natural sounds, combined with the profound silence of the vast landscape, would create a soothing auditory environment for rest. The occasional patrolling of city guards or the distant bleating of livestock would be familiar background noises. Both civilizations relied heavily on astronomical observations, not just for timekeeping but for understanding their place in the cosmos. The magnificent night sky, unmarred by light pollution, would have been a constant, awe-inspiring presence. The movement of stars and planets would have been a visible clock, signaling the passage of the deepest hours of the night and the approaching dawn. This connection to the celestial rhythm would reinforce the natural sleep-wake cycle. The practicalities of daily life also dictated sleep. Agricultural work, dependent on sunlight, meant early rising. The intense heat of the day often necessitated a midday rest or siesta for those engaged in outdoor labor. This midday rest, while not a primary sleep, could take the edge off fatigue, allowing for more sustained evening activity before the main nocturnal sleep. This foreshadows a pattern of midday rest common in hot climates that persists to this day. In essence, for both ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, sleep was a sophisticated interplay of environmental adaptation, social structure, and profound spiritual belief. It was not a private, solitary activity, but a deep engagement with the natural world and the unseen forces of the cosmos. Their methods of rest, from the design of their homes to their interpretation of dreams, laid foundational patterns for human sleep that would echo through history. As you reflect on these ancient civilizations and their approach to sleep, allow the images of the quiet Nile or the majestic Euphrates under a starlit sky to fill your mind. Imagine the peace of a mud brick home, cool and dark, where dreams were not just dreams, but whispers from eternity. Let the deep historical understanding of their rest guide your own mind towards a quiet contemplation, preparing you for your own serene slumber. Let the lingering thought of a pharaoh, contemplating a dream omened by the faint glow of an oil lamp, gently usher in your own sense of deep historical peace, preparing your mind for its own journey into rest. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have journeyed through the ancient rhythms of sleep, the influences of light and sound, the comfort of fire, the security of communal rest, the body's intrinsic clock, the spiritual significance of dreams, the vigilance against darkness, evening rituals, morning awakenings, and the practices of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Tonight, we turn our gaze to the classical world, specifically ancient Greece, to explore how a civilization renowned for its philosophy, democracy, and artistry approached the fundamental act of repose. We will delve into Athenian aesthetics of rest, sleep in ancient Greece, uncovering the unique ways the Greeks integrated sleep into their daily lives, their medical practices, and their rich tapestry of myth and belief. Imagine the gentle Mediterranean climate, with its warm days and relatively mild nights. For the ancient Greeks, particularly in a bustling city-state like Athens, life was often about balance, mind and body, activity and contemplation, waking and rest. Their approach to sleep, while still rooted in natural rhythms, took on a distinct character shaped by their evolving understanding of health, philosophy, and the human condition. Greek homes, particularly those of the average citizen, were relatively simple. They were often built around a central courtyard, designed to provide light and air while maintaining privacy and coolness during the day. Sleeping arrangements for ordinary families would remain largely communal, especially in smaller homes. Mats on the floor, simple cot-like structures, or low beds made of wood, often with woven ropes or straps to support a mattress of straw, wool, or feathers, would be common. Wealthier citizens might have more elaborate beds with carved wooden frames. The key element remained simplicity and functionality, adapting to the climate. Like other ancient civilizations, the Greeks were largely governed by the sun. Their day began at dawn, with most work ceasing at sunset. The limited artificial light, primarily from oil lamps fueled by olive oil, or simple wax candles for special occasions, meant that evening activities were curtailed. Philosophical discussions might continue into the early evening by lamplight, but most physical labor or intricate craftwork would end. This natural cessation of stimulating activity would gently guide the body towards sleep. The Greek understanding of health and medicine, heavily influenced by figures like Hippocrates, emphasized balance and the body's natural healing processes. Sleep was considered vital for restoring the body's humors and promoting recovery from illness. Physicians understood that adequate rest was a cornerstone of good health, and sleep prescriptions were often part of medical treatments. This brings us to the unique Greek practice of incubation, or temple sleep, which we briefly touched upon. The most famous examples were the Asclepiaean temples, dedicated to Asclepius, the god of healing. Sick individuals would travel to these sanctuaries, undergo purification rituals, and then sleep in a sacred chamber, the abaton. The belief was that Asclepius, or his sacred serpents, would appear to them in a dream, either directly healing them or revealing the cure. The quiet, serene atmosphere of these temples, combined with the power of suggestion and belief, undoubtedly had a profound psychosomatic effect, aiding in rest and recovery. The sounds of the temple, the gentle murmurs of other supplicants, and the stillness of the night would create a profoundly calm environment. For the Greeks, dreams held significant meaning, though interpretations varied from pure divination to psychological insight. Homeric epics are full of prophetic dreams, and philosophers like Aristotle even explored dreams from a more proto-scientific perspective, suggesting they were the result of residual sensory impressions from the day. This duality, dreams as divine messages and as reflections of the body, shows a sophisticated intellectual engagement with the sleeping state. The content of dreams, whether recounted in the marketplace or discussed in a philosophical debate, was taken seriously. The concept of the nocturnal silence was keenly felt in Greek life. The bustling sounds of the agora or the workshops would give way to the quieter symphony of nature once night fell. The chirping of cicadas, the rustle of olive trees in the breeze, the distant lapping of the Aegean Sea, these would form the backdrop to a Greek night. The occasional call of a night watchman or the distant sound of music from a symposium would be familiar, non-disruptive elements. Greek daily life, particularly in the warmer months, often included a midday break or siesta. The intense heat of the Mediterranean sun during the early afternoon made sustained activity difficult. People would retreat indoors for a period of rest, a short nap or simply a quiet repose, before resuming their activities as the heat began to wane. This practice of a midday break for rest is still common in many Mediterranean cultures today, demonstrating an intuitive adaptation to environmental conditions. The Greeks had deities associated with sleep. Hypnos was the personification of sleep, often depicted as a gentle youth carrying a poppy branch. His twin brother was Thanatos, the personification of death, highlighting the ancient connection between sleep and the ultimate cessation of life. This mythical framework imbued sleep with a sacred, almost personified quality, making it more than just a biological function. Philosophers also contemplated sleep. Plato, for instance, discussed dreams in relation to the soul's ability to express its desires when unburdened by the body. Aristotle, with a more empirical approach, considered the physiological aspects of sleep and waking. These intellectual explorations added layers of cultural significance to the act of slumber. Even the drinking of wine at the evening symposium, a social gathering for discussion and intellectual exchange, was often done in a controlled manner, with diluted wine, precisely to avoid excessive intoxication that might disrupt productive discourse or, later, restful sleep. The aim was moderation, even in pleasure, to maintain balance. So, for the ancient Greeks, sleep was an integral part of a balanced life. It was a natural consequence of the day's activities, mediated by limited light and the soothing sounds of nature. It was a vital component of health, a portal for divine messages, and a subject of philosophical inquiry. Their aesthetic of repose was one of harmony with nature, moderation, and an understanding of the deep connection between mind, body, and spirit. As you reflect on these Athenian aesthetics of rest, allow the gentle wisdom of ancient Greece to settle in your mind. Imagine the peace of a warm Mediterranean night, the soft glow of an oil lamp, and the quiet contemplation that precedes a truly restorative sleep. Let the balance sought by the Greeks inspire your own approach to rest. Let the lingering thought of a philosopher, quietly reflecting on dreams by the gentle light of an olive oil lamp, bring a final sense of calm and intellectual tranquility, preparing your mind for its own journey into rest. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have explored the natural rhythms of sleep, the influences of light and sound, the comfort of fire, the security of communal rest, the body's intrinsic clock, the spiritual significance of dreams, the vigilance against darkness, evening rituals, morning awakenings, and the practices of ancient Egypt and Greece. Tonight, we immerse ourselves in the world of the Roman Empire, a civilization famed for its engineering, law, and vast dominion. We will delve into Roman reclinations, sleep in ancient Rome, uncovering how this powerful society, with its urban complexities and diverse population, approached the act of rest, from the humble plebeian's cot to the luxurious sleep of the patrician. Imagine the bustling, vibrant life of ancient Rome, a city of millions, a hub of commerce, politics, and culture. While the day was filled with activity, the arrival of night brought a distinct shift in pace, a time for retreat and repose, albeit a more nuanced one than in simpler societies. Roman homes varied greatly with social class. For the vast majority, the working class, the plebeians living in multi-story apartment blocks called insulae, sleep was a communal and often cramped affair. Families would share small rooms, sleeping on simple straw mattresses laid on the floor or on basic wooden cots like tea. Privacy, as we conceive it, was minimal. The sounds of other families, both within the insula and from the bustling streets below, would have been constant, though perhaps normalized into a background hum that still allowed for sleep. The heat in summer, and dampness in winter, would have been factors in comfort. For the wealthy patricians, sleep was a more private and luxurious affair. Their sprawling domus townhouses or villi country estates had designated bedrooms, cubicula, often beautifully decorated with frescoes and mosaics. Beds were elaborate, often made of bronze or expensive woods, with woven supports and soft mattresses filled with wool, feathers, or even finely shredded reeds. The wealthier Romans might have even used small, individual oil lamps or candles for personal light within their bedrooms, allowing for reading or quiet contemplation before sleep. Regardless of social class, the Romans, like other ancient cultures, were still fundamentally governed by the sun. The working day began at dawn and concluded around the middle of the afternoon, especially in the summer when the heat became intense. This meant that the famous Roman meridiadio, or siesta, a midday rest, was a common and important practice, particularly during the hottest months. This period of rest allowed people to escape the peak heat of the day and recharge, preventing exhaustion and allowing for continued activity in the cooler late afternoon. This segmented approach to daytime activity and rest was an intuitive adaptation to their climate. The primary sources of artificial light in Roman homes and public spaces were oil lamps, lucernae, typically made of clay or bronze, and wax or tallow candles, candelae. Roman lamps were highly advanced for their time, some with multiple wicks, but still produced a relatively dim, warm light. Public streets were largely unlit, making night travel dangerous and rare for most citizens. This limited illumination meant that for the vast majority, once darkness fell, social and productive activity greatly diminished, naturally channeling people towards rest. The flickering light of the lamps created intimate spaces, perfect for quiet family time, storytelling, or solitary reflection. The sounds of the Roman night were a unique blend. In the countryside, it would be the familiar symphony of nature, much like we've discussed. But in the city, the nights were often surprisingly noisy, even without electricity. Wagons and carts, often forbidden during the day due to congestion, were allowed to travel at night, creating a clatter of hooves and wheels on cobblestones. The cries of street vendors, the distant sounds of revelry from a late banquet, or the murmurs from neighboring insulae would all contribute to the urban nocturnal soundscape. This suggests a capacity for Romans to habituate to ambient noise, finding rest despite it, though undoubtedly some found the city nights disruptive. For the Romans, dreams held significant importance, often viewed as omens or messages from the gods. Dream interpretation was common, and there were specialized diviners who could offer guidance. Generals might consult dream interpreters before battles, and individuals might seek meaning from their sleep visions regarding personal dilemmas. The act of dreaming was a serious affair, a direct line to divine will or future events, influencing decisions in waking life. The Roman pantheon included somnus, sleep, and mors, death, echoing the Greek hypnos and thanatos, again showing the strong association between rest and the ultimate cessation of life. The Roman concept of public baths, thermae, also played a role in pre-sleep relaxation. Visiting the baths in the late afternoon or early evening was a popular social ritual. The combination of warm water, gentle massages, and social interaction would have been incredibly relaxing, preparing the body for a deeper, more comfortable sleep. The warmth from the baths would linger, a soothing sensation as one retired for the night. Despite the relative sophistication of Roman society, the necessity of vigilance against dangers in the dark remained. Roman cities had night watchmen, vigils, who patrolled the streets, primarily to fight fires and deter crime. Their presence, and the occasional shouts or sounds of their patrols, would have been a comforting, albeit sometimes disruptive, reminder of security in the darkness. In the countryside, the threat of bandits or wild animals remained. The Roman army also had strict sleep routines, with watch cycles maintained throughout the night in military camps. Sentries would be posted, ensuring the safety of the sleeping legions. This highly organized approach to nighttime security allowed soldiers to gain vital rest, even in potentially hostile environments. In essence, Roman sleep, while incorporating elements common to all ancient societies like segmented sleep and reliance on natural light, also reflected the complexities of their vast urban centers and social hierarchies. From shared, noisy communal sleep in insulae to private, luxurious repose in domus, the Romans adapted their rest to their unique cultural and environmental circumstances. Yet, the sun, the dim glow of the lamp, and the rhythm of their daily lives remained the ultimate orchestrators of their repose. As you reflect on these Roman reclinings, allow the image of a busy Roman day giving way to a quiet, lamp-lit evening to settle gently in your mind. Imagine the peace of the meridiadio, or the subtle sounds of an ancient city at rest. Let the historical journey through their nights guide your own thoughts towards a state of deep, prepared slumber. Let the lingering thought of a Roman citizen, perhaps reclining on a simple cot or a luxurious bed, surrendering to sleep as the faint glow of an oil lamp cast long shadows, bring a final sense of historical calm and prepare your mind for its own tranquil rest. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have explored the natural rhythms of sleep across various ancient civilizations. Tonight, we journey to a specific and fascinating context within the European Middle Ages, the medieval monastery. We will delve into medieval monastic slumber, the rigors and rhythms of contemplative sleep, uncovering how religious devotion, strict communal rules, and the profound absence of artificial light shaped a unique and highly structured approach to sleep, deeply intertwined with spiritual practice. Imagine a world where the very purpose of existence revolved around devotion and prayer, where every hour of the day, and indeed the night, was consecrated to God. Monasteries, particularly those following the rule of Saint Benedict, were self-sufficient communities where life was rigorously scheduled according to the divine office, a series of prayer services performed at specific hours, often throughout the night. This schedule inherently dictated a distinctive and often challenging sleep pattern. For monks and nuns, the day typically began long before dawn, sometimes as early as 2 or 3 a.m., with the first night office known as matins or vigils. This meant that the main period of sleep had to occur earlier in the evening to allow for this early awakening. This practice is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for the prevalence of segmented sleep in pre-industrial societies. Consider the layout of a monastic dormitory, often a large, unheated hall with simple, individual sleeping cells or curtained cubicles. Beds were austere, typically wooden boards or simple straw mattresses known as paljasses, with perhaps a wool blanket. There was no luxury, comfort was often seen as a distraction from spiritual focus. The purpose of the bed was solely for necessary rest, not indulgence. The communal nature of the dormitory meant that the sounds of individual monks stirring, praying quietly, or preparing for the next office would be part of the ambient environment. The monks would typically go to bed shortly after the evening office of Compline, which usually occurred just after sunset. This would be their first sleep, lasting perhaps 3 to 4 hours. They would rise for matins, spend an hour or two in prayer, meditation, and reading, often by the dim light of a few beeswax candles or small oil lamps. This was a period of quiet, contemplative wakefulness, a sacred interlude in the heart of the night. Following matins, they would often return to bed for a second sleep, lasting until dawn, when the morning office of lauds would begin, ushering in the new day. This intentional breaking of sleep, dictated by the monastic horarium daily schedule, was not a disruption but a purposeful structure for spiritual practice. It demonstrated a societal acceptance, even cultivation, of segmented sleep. The very routine trained the body to divide its rest in this manner. Light in the monastery was extremely limited. Beeswax candles were the primary source of illumination, particularly for reading in the scriptorium or for lighting the chapel during night services. Tallow candles might be used for more mundane tasks. The quality of this light was warm and dim, conducive to a calm state. The monks would navigate the dark corridors by the faint glow of handheld candles or memory, a stark contrast to modern brightly lit paths. This enforced dimness after sunset naturally encouraged the body's melatonin production and preparedness for sleep. The silence within the monastic walls was profound, especially during the hours of darkness. The Great Silence was often observed from Compline until after prime, the first morning office. This strict discipline of silence, broken only by the sounds of chanting, prayer, or the quiet footsteps of monks, created an intensely quiet environment. This lack of external auditory stimulation would naturally lead to a deeper internal focus and a more peaceful transition into sleep. Every subtle creak of wood or rustle of robes would be noticeable. The monastic environment also provided a strong sense of security. Monasteries were often fortified, offering protection from external dangers like bandits or invaders. This enclosed, protected space, combined with the collective vigilance of a community dedicated to a higher purpose, would have contributed to a sense of safety, allowing the monks to rest more peacefully, despite the rigors of their schedule. The physical demands of monastic life, manual labor in the fields, copying manuscripts, daily chores, would ensure a natural physical fatigue that aided sleep. There was little opportunity for idleness or mental overstimulation that might lead to restlessness. The structured, purposeful day naturally led to a need for restorative sleep. Even dreams were given spiritual consideration. Monks and nuns would often keep spiritual journals, sometimes noting down dreams, which might be interpreted as divine messages, temptations, or reflections of their spiritual state. Discernment of spirits was important, and dreams were seen as one potential avenue for spiritual influence. This emphasis on the inner life extended to the sleeping hours. The monastic horarium itself was a powerful force, conditioning the body to wake and sleep at precise times, irrespective of individual desires. This discipline over the body's natural inclinations, while for a spiritual purpose, also reveals how adaptable human sleep patterns can be when shaped by strong external routines and a clear purpose. It demonstrates a conscious manipulation of the circadian rhythm through rigorous scheduling. So, medieval monastic slumber was a unique blend of austerity, discipline, and profound spiritual intention. It offers a powerful historical case study for segmented sleep, the impact of limited light, and the role of profound silence in shaping rest. It was a life lived in deep harmony with the natural cycle of light and dark, punctuated by sacred duties that transcended the purely biological need for repose. As you reflect on the quiet austerity and structured devotion of monastic life, allow the image of a monk, rising in the deep stillness of the night to offer prayers by candlelight, to settle gently in your mind. Feel the profound silence, the focused purpose, and the deep peace that such a life, even with its rigors, could offer. Let this historical journey guide your own thoughts towards a calm, purposeful preparation for your own rest. Let the lingering thought of ancient chants echoing through stone halls in the pre-dawn hours, a testament to a life deeply intertwined with the rhythms of the night, bring a final sense of historical tranquility, preparing your mind for its own peaceful slumber. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have explored the natural rhythms of sleep, the influences of light and sound, the comfort of fire, the security of communal rest, the body's intrinsic clock, the spiritual significance of dreams, the vigilance against darkness, evening rituals, morning awakenings, and the practices of ancient civilizations and monastic life. Tonight, we journey into the heart of medieval Europe, beyond the monastery walls, to understand how sleep was experienced by the vast majority of people, from the humble peasant tilling the land to the powerful lord in his stone castle. We will delve into feudal fortresses and farmers' fields, sleep in medieval Europe, uncovering the varied yet interconnected ways that status, environment, and the persistent absence of electric light shaped the nighttime lives of a continent. Imagine a landscape dominated by vast agricultural lands, interspersed with small villages and fortified castles. Life was largely agrarian, dictated by the seasons and the sun. This fundamental reality profoundly influenced sleep patterns for the majority of the population. For the peasants and serfs who comprised the bulk of medieval society, life was physically demanding. Their days were spent in the fields, working from dawn to dusk, plowing, planting, harvesting, and tending livestock. This intense physical labor ensured a natural, profound fatigue that made falling asleep relatively easy. Their dwellings were typically small, simple, and often consisted of just one or two rooms, built from wattle and daub, thatch, or timber. Sleep was almost universally communal for peasant families. Parents, children, and sometimes even extended family members or servants, would share a single room, sleeping on straw mattresses laid directly on the floor or on simple wooden platforms. Privacy was not a concept, warmth and security were paramount. Bodies huddled together under shared rough wool blankets or animal skins provided essential warmth in unheated cottages, especially during the harsh European winters. The sounds of breathing, light snoring, and subtle movements of others would be the constant backdrop to their slumber, a comforting presence rather than a disturbance. The peasant's hearth, the central fireplace, was the focal point of the home. As dusk approached, the family would gather around the fire for their evening meal, often a simple pottage or bread. The warmth and flickering light of the fire would be the primary source of illumination. This natural dimming of light would signal the body's preparation for sleep. There was no practical way to extend the day's light significantly for complex tasks. Evening activities were limited to quiet conversation, storytelling, mending clothes, or perhaps very simple crafts, all by the faint, warm glow of the fire. The segmented sleep pattern was certainly the norm for peasants. Rising before dawn for farm work or tending animals, taking a first sleep after sunset, and then a period of wakefulness in the quiet of the night, perhaps to tend a sick child, check on livestock, or simply to reflect, before a second sleep until the morning call to labor. The complete darkness of the countryside, broken only by moonlight or the stars, facilitated this natural division of sleep. The sounds of the medieval rural night would be primarily natural. The rustle of wind through trees, the calls of nocturnal animals like owls or foxes, the distant lowing of cattle, or the bleating of sheep. These sounds, along with the deep, pervasive silence, would define their nocturnal acoustic environment, acting as both lullabies and subtle warnings. Now, let us turn to the lords and ladies residing in their stone castles and manors. While their lives were often less physically arduous and more focused on administration, warfare, or social graces, their sleep patterns were still fundamentally shaped by the same pre-electric constraints, albeit with more comfort and security. Castle life, even for the nobility, was often surprisingly communal compared to modern standards. The Great Hall, for instance, might serve as a dining area, a court, and a dormitory for many retainers, soldiers, and guests. Even the lord and lady might have had a main bedchamber, but servants and family members often slept in adjoining rooms or even in curtained sections within the same large room. This was less about physical warmth and more about proximity for service, security, and the social norms of the time. Beds in castles were more elaborate, often four-poster structures with heavy curtains, offering a degree of visual privacy and warmth. Mattresses would be stuffed with feathers or down for greater comfort. The lord and lady might have individual tallow or beeswax candles or small oil lamps at their bedside, allowing for reading or writing for a slightly longer period. However, these were still very limited light sources. The widespread illumination of an entire large chamber was impossible without dozens of expensive candles. Security was paramount in a castle. Gateways were closed and barred at dusk. Sentries would patrol the walls and battlements, and the sounds of their calls, or the creak of portcullis chains, would be part of the nocturnal soundscape, offering a sense of protection. This vigilance meant that, within the castle walls, sleep could be deeper, less burdened by the immediate threat of external dangers. The routines in a castle would also reflect the solar day. Meals were served by daylight, and formal activities ceased after dusk. Evenings might involve music, games, or storytelling in the Great Hall by firelight, but these were quiet entertainments leading towards repose. The absence of intense light meant minds were not stimulated late into the night. Both peasant and noble alike would have integrated religious practices into their evening routines, prayers for protection, blessings for the family, or quiet contemplation before sleep. This spiritual dimension provided a universal source of comfort and mental preparation for the night. The seasonal changes, particularly the long, dark winters, would naturally lead to longer periods of repose for everyone. Less light meant less outdoor work for peasants, and more time indoors for both classes, fostering an extended period of rest. The cycle of the year was inextricably linked to the rhythm of sleep. So, medieval European sleep, whether in a drafty castle or a humble cottage, was a fascinating study in adaptation. It was communal, deeply tied to the rhythms of agricultural life, and profoundly shaped by the scarcity of artificial light and the constant, subtle awareness of both natural and human dangers. It was a sleep born of physical labor, enforced by natural darkness, and sustained by the simple comforts of hearth and community. As you reflect on these medieval nights, allow the image of a peasant family huddled by a dying fire, or a noble in a grand bedchamber lit by a single flickering candle, to settle gently in your mind. Feel the enduring rhythm of their lives, rising and sleeping with the sun, finding rest amidst the challenges of their age. Let this historical journey guide your own thoughts towards a deep appreciation for the simplicity and resilience of ancient repose. Let the lingering thought of the vast, quiet darkness of a medieval night, broken only by natural sounds and the soft glow of a distant hearth, bring a final sense of historical tranquility, preparing your mind for its own peaceful slumber. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have journeyed through the ancient rhythms of sleep across diverse cultures and historical periods. Tonight, our path leads us across vast continents to explore the nuanced and deeply integrated sleep practices of various Native American societies before the profound impact of European contact. We will delve into indigenous illuminations, sleep practices of Native Americans, uncovering how their deep connection to the land, their intricate spiritual beliefs, and their unique social structures shape the experience of night and repose across diverse environments, from the forests of the east to the plains and deserts of the west. Imagine the vast, unspoiled landscapes of North, Central, and South America, where indigenous peoples lived for millennia in profound harmony with their natural surroundings. Their understanding of sleep was not just physiological, it was deeply spiritual, communal, and intimately tied to the cycles of the earth and sky. Regardless of tribe or region, the universal absence of electricity meant that the sun and moon were the primary timekeepers. Days were for hunting, gathering, cultivating crops, crafting, and social interaction. Nights were for retreat, rest, and often, spiritual connection. This inherent reliance on natural light meant that sleep patterns were intrinsically circadian, aligned with the body's natural clock. Most Native American dwellings, whether tipis of the plains, longhouses of the Iroquois, wigwams of the Algonquian, Pueblo homes of the southwest, or wattle and daub structures of the southeast, were designed for practicality and often centered around a communal fire pit. This fire, as we've discussed, was paramount. It provided essential warmth, especially during cold nights, and its flickering light became the focal point for evening gatherings. Communal sleeping was the norm across almost all Native American cultures. Families and extended kin groups would sleep together in a shared space. In a longhouse, for example, multiple families might share a large dwelling, each having a designated sleeping area around a shared hearth. In a teepee, the entire family would sleep in a circle around the central fire. This close proximity offered crucial shared warmth, especially vital in cold climates where external heat sources were limited. It also provided collective security. The presence of many bodies, each subtly aware of the others, enhanced vigilance against both animal predators and human threats. A rustle, a subtle sound, would alert the group, fostering a powerful sense of mutual protection. Bedding was simple, made from what the land provided: animal hides like buffalo or deer skins, woven mats of reeds or grasses, or layers of natural fibers. These were practical, insulating, and easily transportable for nomadic groups. The comfort was derived from the natural materials and the warmth of shared bodies. The sounds of the indigenous night were the unadulterated symphony of nature. The howling of coyotes on the plains, the hoot of an owl in a forest, the distant murmur of a river, the rustle of wind through cornfields or pine needles. These were the lullabies and the alarm systems. A familiar sound was comforting, an unusual sound would instantly signal danger and heighten awareness. This deep attunement to natural acoustics was a critical survival skill and shaped the depth and quality of sleep. Dreams held immense spiritual significance across most Native American traditions. Dreams were often seen as a direct conduit to the spirit world, a source of guidance from ancestors, animal spirits, or creator beings. Shamans and spiritual leaders, in particular, would interpret dreams for the community, using them to inform decisions about hunting, war, healing, or ceremonial practices. Dream catchers, for instance, are a well-known example of a physical representation of this belief, designed to filter out bad dreams and allow good dreams to pass through. The act of sleeping was often viewed as a journey, a temporary departure of the spirit to gain wisdom. Evening rituals were common, setting the stage for rest. This might include communal meals, sharing food around the fire as dusk settled, storytelling. Oral traditions were vital. Elders would recount myths, legends, and history, often in rhythmic, soothing tones, by the firelight. This communal listening was inherently relaxing and mentally engaging without being overstimulating. Singing and drumming. Gentle, repetitive songs or drum beats could be part of evening ceremonies, creating a meditative atmosphere. Simple hygiene. Perhaps a wash in a nearby stream or basin before retiring. Prayers or offerings. Giving thanks to the spirits for the day's blessings and seeking protection for the night. These spiritual acts brought a sense of peace and closure. The seasonal cycles profoundly impacted sleep patterns. In winter, with longer nights and colder temperatures, more time would be spent in repose, perhaps in extended periods of communal sleep around a larger, more constantly tended fire. Summer nights, while shorter, might offer opportunities for outdoor sleeping when conditions allowed, under the vast, star-filled sky. For nomadic or semi-nomadic groups, the ability to adapt sleep quickly to new environments was crucial. Setting up temporary shelters, establishing a fire, and finding a secure communal sleeping spot would be done efficiently, with practiced ease. This constant movement meant that comfort was always balanced with portability and survival. The concept of a midday rest or siesta would also have been common, particularly in warmer climates or during periods of intense labor. Finding shade and taking a brief period of repose would prevent exhaustion and allow for continued productivity in the cooler parts of the day. In essence, Native American sleep practices were deeply holistic. They were not merely about physical rest, but about a profound integration with the natural world, social harmony, and spiritual connection. The absence of artificial light meant a life lived in tune with natural circadian rhythms, and the communal nature of their societies fostered a deep sense of security and belonging, even in the vulnerable state of sleep. As you reflect on these indigenous illuminations, allow the images of vast, untouched landscapes under a starlit sky to fill your mind. Imagine the warmth of a communal fire, the quiet wisdom of storytelling, and the deep peace of a people truly connected to their environment. Let the ancient wisdom of their rest guide your own thoughts towards a more harmonious and peaceful slumber. Let the lingering thought of a family sleeping soundly in a teepee, surrounded by the quiet sounds of the plains and the comforting presence of their kin, bring a final sense of historical tranquility, preparing your mind for its own peaceful rest. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have traversed diverse landscapes and cultures, from ancient civilizations to indigenous societies. Tonight, we gently shift our historical lens to a fascinating evolution within European homes during the late medieval and early modern periods, preceding the Industrial Revolution. We will delve into the rise of the bedchamber, privacy and personal space in pre-industrial Europe, exploring how the concept of individual sleep, separate from the communal hearth, gradually began to emerge, laying the groundwork for our modern notions of a private bedroom. Imagine a time when the idea of a dedicated, private room solely for sleeping was a nascent concept, largely limited to the very wealthy. For centuries, as we've discussed, communal sleeping was the norm driven by necessity, warmth, security, and the simple realities of smaller, multi-purpose dwellings. However, as society evolved, as wealth accumulated, and as architectural styles shifted, so too did the spatial organization of the home, leading to a profound change in the experience of rest. The seeds of the bedchamber's rise can be traced to the later Middle Ages and the Renaissance, particularly among the aristocracy and burgeoning merchant classes. As their wealth grew, so did the size and complexity of their homes. This increased space allowed for the creation of more specialized rooms, moving away from the single great hall that served all functions. Initially, a bedchamber was still often a semi-private space. It might be a room off the main hall, easily accessible, and frequently used for receiving guests, dining, or conducting business during the day. The bed itself, particularly for the wealthy, became a symbol of status. Elaborate, carved, wooden four-poster beds, often draped with rich textiles and curtains, provided not only warmth but also a crucial visual and psychological barrier from the rest of the room. These bed curtains were perhaps the earliest form of personal privacy in sleep. They created a room within a room, allowing the occupant a sense of enclosure even in a shared or semi-public space. The primary drivers for this shift towards more private sleep spaces were multifaceted. Firstly, increased wealth and social stratification allowed for larger homes with more rooms. As families became wealthier, they could afford to build and heat separate rooms, moving away from the absolute necessity of communal warmth. This newfound affluence translated directly into architectural changes that facilitated private sleeping. Secondly, a developing sense of privacy and decorum began to emerge, particularly among the elite. As society became more refined, there was a growing desire to separate personal life from public display. The act of sleeping, inherently vulnerable, became something to be done away from the gaze of servants or guests. The bedchamber thus became a more intimate and exclusive space, where personal conversations and activities could take place. Thirdly, the development of more efficient heating methods beyond just the central hearth, such as enclosed fireplaces and later, early forms of stoves, meant that warmth could be distributed more effectively to individual rooms. This reduced the absolute reliance on body heat from communal sleeping for survival in cold climates. A well-constructed fireplace in a bedchamber could provide sufficient warmth for individual comfort. The bed itself evolved from a simple floor mat to a substantial piece of furniture. These early modern beds were often quite high, requiring steps to climb into them, and provided a sense of elevation and separation from the cold floor and potential drafts. The use of finer linens, feather mattresses, and multiple blankets added layers of comfort previously unavailable, transforming sleep into a more luxurious experience. Despite the emergence of these bedchambers, it's important to remember that they were rarely completely solitary. Even in a wealthy household, a bedchamber might still contain a small cot for a personal servant or a child. The concept of an entirely solitary bedroom for a single adult was still a long way off for most. However, the primary occupant of the main bed now had a greater degree of personal space and control over their immediate sleeping environment. The transition to more private sleeping arrangements also meant a slight shift in the experience of sound. While a private bedchamber would still be subject to the ambient sounds of the house and the outside world, the physical barriers of walls and closed doors would dampen the sounds of other people within the household, offering a quieter, more contained environment for rest. This reduced direct auditory stimulation from other sleeping bodies. The limited artificial light from candles and increasingly sophisticated oil lamps remained the norm. A bedchamber might have several candles, offering more illumination than a common space, allowing for reading or quiet contemplation well into the evening. However, the warm, gentle light still naturally promoted melatonin and signaled rest, rather than extending wakefulness indefinitely. The shift from bright daytime light to the dim, warm glow of the bedchamber became a clearer, more intentional signal for repose. This gradual shift towards the bedchamber also meant that the segmented sleep pattern might have evolved slightly for the elite. While still likely prevalent, the increased comfort and privacy could have allowed for slightly longer stretches of uninterrupted sleep, or for the wakeful period to be spent in more isolated contemplation rather than communal interaction. The focus on the bedchamber also brought with it an emerging emphasis on sleep as a private, restorative act for the individual. While still recognizing its social and spiritual dimensions, the personal bedchamber became a sanctuary for the body's essential repair and renewal. So, the rise of the bedchamber in pre-industrial Europe was not an overnight revolution, but a slow, gradual evolution driven by increasing wealth, changing social norms, and technological advancements in home heating. It marked the beginning of a profound shift towards the individualized sleep experience that defines much of our modern world, moving away from collective vulnerability towards personal sanctuary. As you reflect on the genesis of the private bedchamber, allow the gentle images of a finely draped bed, the soft glow of a few candles, and the growing sense of personal enclosure to settle in your mind. Feel the subtle shift from communal necessity to individual choice, a historical transition that paved the way for our contemporary spaces of rest. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have explored the evolution of sleep patterns across diverse environments, from ancient civilizations to the emerging privacy of the European bedchamber. Tonight, we turn our attention to the specific challenges and adaptations of sleep within the growing urban centers of the pre-industrial world, focusing on a crucial figure, the night watchman. We will delve into the age of the watchman, urban nights and early security, exploring how the need for vigilance in densely populated, unlit cities shaped the experience of night, creating a unique auditory and psychological landscape for those seeking rest. Imagine a pre-industrial city after sunset. Unlike the profound darkness and natural quiet of the countryside, these urban centers, even without electricity, could be surprisingly active and often dangerous places once the sun disappeared. The narrow, winding streets, unlit by any public lighting, became labyrinths of deep shadow. This environment necessitated a system of security to protect sleeping citizens and their property. This is where the night watchman comes into prominence. From ancient Roman vigils to medieval town guards and early modern watchmen, these individuals were the eyes and ears of the city after dark. Their primary duties were to patrol the streets, deter crime, detect fires, and, crucially, to announce the hours of the night. Consider the sensory experience of a city dweller trying to sleep. The sounds of the day, the bustling markets, the cries of vendors, the clatter of artisans, would gradually subside as dusk fell. However, they would be replaced by a different set of nocturnal sounds. In some cities, wagons and carts, often forbidden during the day due to congestion, would be allowed to travel at night, creating a rhythmic, often loud, clatter of hooves and wooden wheels on cobblestones. The distant sounds of revelry from taverns or private homes, the occasional shout, or the murmur of late-night conversations would all contribute to a unique urban soundscape. But the most consistent and defining sound of the pre-electric urban night was the voice of the watchman. As they patrolled, often carrying a lantern and a staff, they would call out the time, perhaps a short verse, or a warning. All's well, and the hour is 10. Or, past midnight, and a clear night. These calls, echoing through the dark streets, served multiple purposes. Timekeeping. For citizens without clocks, the watchman's call was the primary way to track the passage of the night hours. Reassurance. The sound of the watchman's voice was a comforting presence, a signal that someone was awake and vigilant, providing a psychological sense of security for those trying to sleep. Deterrence. Their presence and calls acted as a deterrent to criminals. Fire detection. They were often the first responders to fires, shouting warnings and raising the alarm. Imagine drifting off to sleep, and then, during a period of segmented wakefulness, hearing the distant, muffled call of the watchman. It would be a familiar sound, a reassuring reminder that the city was being watched over, allowing the sleeper to sink back into their second sleep with a greater sense of safety. This auditory ritual became deeply ingrained in the urban sleep experience. The limited public lighting was another defining feature. Streets were largely unlit, making night travel dangerous. Citizens who ventured out after dark would carry their own lanterns or torches. This meant that the vast majority of people remained indoors once night fell, further emphasizing the role of the watchman as the primary guardian of the public space. The darkness outside their windows would be profound, contrasting with the dim, warm light of their interior lamps or candles. The threat of fire was a constant and terrifying reality in densely packed urban centers, often built with highly flammable materials like wood and thatch. A single spark could quickly engulf entire neighborhoods. Watchmen were crucial in detecting and raising the alarm, often shouting and banging on doors to rouse sleeping residents. The fear of fire, and the relief upon hearing the watchman's, "All's well," would have been a powerful emotional component of urban nights. Crime, too, was a significant concern. Robbery, assault, and other illicit activities thrived under the cover of darkness. The watchman's presence, though often thinly spread, was intended to mitigate these risks. For those sleeping, the knowledge that a watchman was patrolling, even if intermittently, provided a degree of peace of mind. The communal nature of urban living meant that sounds from neighbors were common. Even with the rise of individual bedchambers for the wealthy, the proximity of dwellings in cities meant that the sounds of other people, muffled conversations, footsteps, domestic sounds, would still be part of the ambient environment. People developed a capacity to filter out these familiar sounds, allowing them to rest. The segmented sleep pattern continued to be prevalent in urban settings. The watchman's calls, marking the hours, would naturally punctuate the night, perhaps coinciding with periods of wakefulness for citizens who might then tend to their own needs, or simply listen to the sounds of the night before returning to sleep. So, the age of the watchman was a period where urban sleep was a delicate balance between the desire for rest and the necessity of security. The profound darkness of the city streets, the ambient sounds of urban life, and the reassuring, rhythmic calls of the night watchman all combined to create a unique nocturnal environment. These watchmen, with their lanterns and their voices, were the unsung heroes of urban repose, allowing millions to find their rest in a world still largely unlit and untamed after sunset. As you reflect on these urban nights of old, allow the image of a solitary watchman, his lantern casting a small circle of light on a dark cobblestone street, his voice echoing through the quiet city, to settle gently in your mind. Feel the sense of reassurance his presence would have brought to sleeping citizens. Let this historical journey guide your own thoughts towards a deep appreciation for the peace and security that allows for truly restful slumber. Let the lingering thought of a distant, rhythmic call of "All's well," echoing through the pre-electric city night, bring a final sense of historical tranquility, preparing your mind for its own peaceful rest. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have explored the evolution of sleep patterns across diverse environments, from ancient civilizations to the emerging privacy of the bedchamber and the vigilance of urban nights. Tonight, we turn our attention to the intimate and crucial relationship between sleep and sickness in the pre-industrial world. We will delve into sleep and sickness, ancient remedies and rest as medicine, exploring how ancient and medieval societies understood the role of sleep in health and healing, how they sought to induce it, and the simple, often intuitive, remedies they employed to aid troubled slumber. Imagine a world without modern pharmaceuticals, advanced medical diagnostics, or a deep understanding of germ theory. In such a world, the body's innate ability to heal itself, and the fundamental role of rest in that process, was profoundly recognized. From the earliest shamans to the physicians of ancient Greece and Rome, and the herbalists of the Middle Ages, sleep was considered not just a pleasant necessity, but a potent form of medicine. The most fundamental understanding was that rest was essential for recovery. When the body was sick, fatigued, or injured, the immediate and intuitive response was to seek repose. Sleep allowed the body to divert its energy from daily activities towards repair and regeneration. It was observed that those who rested well recovered faster, while those whose sleep was disturbed often lingered in illness. This common-sense observation formed the bedrock of ancient medical advice regarding sleep. Ancient medical theories, such as the Greek concept of the four humors blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile often incorporated sleep into their understanding of balance and imbalance. Adequate sleep was believed to help maintain the proper equilibrium of these humors, and disturbed sleep was seen as a sign of imbalance or a contributing factor to illness. Restoring sleep was therefore a key part of treatment. So, how did they try to induce sleep when it was elusive, either due to illness, pain, or anxiety? They primarily relied on natural remedies and soothing practices, often employing what we would now call sleep hygiene, but without the modern terminology. Herbal remedies were paramount. Throughout history, various plants were recognized for their sedative or calming properties. Poppies, known for containing opium, were used in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome to induce sleep and relieve pain. Chamomile, lavender, valerian, and hops were widely used across different cultures for their calming effects. These herbs might be consumed as infusions or teas, applied as poultices, or used in aromatic preparations. Imagine the gentle aroma of dried herbs simmering over a fire, releasing their calming essences into the air, a natural sedative. Warmth and comfort were also crucial. A sick person would be kept warm, often by a fire, with extra blankets, or by being surrounded by the warmth of others in communal sleeping arrangements. Warm compresses, or bathing in warm water, as in the Roman baths, were also used to relax the body and ease pain, making sleep more accessible. The very act of being cared for, of having warmth provided, would reduce anxiety and promote relaxation. Dietary considerations played a role. Heavy, indigestible foods were avoided before sleep, particularly for the sick. Simple, light broths or gruels might be consumed. The absence of processed sugars and stimulants that disrupt modern sleep was also a natural advantage. Massage and gentle touch could be used to soothe discomfort and promote relaxation. The application of warm oils or herbal balms, combined with gentle rubbing, would ease muscle tension and encourage drowsiness. The power of sound and silence was implicitly understood. For the sick, quiet was often encouraged. The absence of jarring noises, combined with the gentle, rhythmic sounds of nature or the quiet murmurs of caring family members, created an environment conducive to rest. Lullabies, ancient and universal, were sung to children, soothing them into sleep. Ritual and belief also played a significant psychological role. As discussed in Chapter 7 and 12, sacred sleep in temples like the Asclepioea in Greece was believed to bring healing through divine dreams. The very act of believing in the curative power of such sleep could alleviate anxiety and facilitate deeper rest, harnessing the potent connection between mind and body. Priests or healers might offer prayers or perform rituals over the sick, creating a calming atmosphere and instilling hope. For mental and emotional comfort, storytelling continued to be important. Gentle, familiar stories, told in soft voices, could distract the mind from pain or anxiety, guiding it towards a calmer state. The rhythmic nature of oral traditions was inherently soothing. The natural cycle of darkness itself was a powerful aid. Without artificial light to disrupt melatonin production, the body of a sick person would naturally become more receptive to sleep as dusk fell. The profound darkness of the night would act as a natural signal for the body to shut down and enter a restorative phase. In essence, ancient remedies for sleep were holistic and intuitive, relying on the inherent healing power of nature and the body. They understood that sleep was not a separate entity but deeply intertwined with overall health. Their practices were simple, sensory, and often deeply comforting, designed to ease suffering and allow the body to do its vital work of healing during the quiet hours of repose. As you reflect on these ancient approaches to sleep and sickness, allow the gentle wisdom of natural remedies and the profound recognition of rest as medicine to settle in your mind. Imagine a simple herbal tea, the warmth of a fire, or the soothing touch of a caregiver, all working in harmony to bring forth the healing power of sleep. Let this historical understanding deepen your appreciation for the body's innate capacity for self-repair, especially during rest. Let the lingering thought of an ancient healer, carefully preparing a calming herbal infusion for a restless patient, bring a final sense of historical tranquility, preparing your mind for its own peaceful slumber. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have traversed diverse historical landscapes, examining how sleep was shaped by natural rhythms, cultural practices, and the absence of modern technologies. Tonight, we turn to a profound shift in human history, one that began subtly but ultimately reshaped our relationship with time itself, and consequently, our relationship with sleep, the increasing quantification of time. We will delve into clocks, calendars, and control, the quantification of time and sleep, exploring how the gradual development of mechanical timekeeping, the refinement of calendars, and the desire for greater control over schedules began to detach human activity, including rest, from its ancient, purely natural rhythms. Imagine a world where time was not a precise, measurable commodity, but a fluid, organic experience. For millennia, as we've discussed, time was marked by the sun's position, the moon's phases, the changing seasons, and the natural rhythms of the body. The day began at sunrise and ended at sunset. Periods of sleep were dictated by the depth of darkness. This was a task-oriented, Time, where activities continued until a task was completed or natural light failed. The journey towards quantifying time began early, with the development of sundials and water clocks in ancient civilizations. While these provided a more standardized measure of hours, they were often imprecise and still tied to natural phenomena, sunlight for sundials, consistent water flow for clepsydras. They began to introduce the concept of fixed hours, but did not yet dictate the precise rhythm of daily life for most people. The real revolution began in medieval Europe, particularly from the 13th century onwards, with the invention and gradual spread of mechanical clocks. These early clocks were monumental devices, housed in church towers or public squares, designed to regulate monastic life and urban markets. They rang bells at fixed intervals, often hourly, creating an artificial, audible rhythm for the day that was independent of the sun's actual position. Initially, these clocks simply marked time, but over centuries, they began to govern it. As clocks became more accurate and portable, first large public clocks, then domestic clocks, and eventually personal pocket watches, human life started to shift from being dictated by natural light and biological urges to being regulated by the mechanical tick. Consider the profound implications for sleep. Firstly, the standardization of hours meant that the concept of night and day became less flexible. Instead of working until it was too dark to see, and rising when it was light enough, people began to work from a specific hour until another specific hour. This imposed a more rigid structure on the waking day, which in turn influenced when sleep could begin and end. The first sleep and second sleep could be seen as inefficient or inconvenient in a world increasingly moving towards a linear, uninterrupted working day. Secondly, the advent of clocks, particularly in urban centers, began to reduce reliance on natural cues for waking and sleeping. Instead of waiting for the dawn chorus or the sun's warmth, people could be roused by a clock's chime, or by a knock from a knocker-up, in later centuries, forcing them out of bed at a precise, predetermined hour. This began the subtle severing of the inherent link between biological readiness and the act of waking. Thirdly, the ability to accurately measure and record time fostered a new emphasis on efficiency and productivity. Time became a commodity, something to be managed, saved, and utilized optimally. This mindset would eventually lead to the idea that sleep was lost time, if it wasn't strictly confined to a single, uninterrupted block, laying the groundwork for the modern ideal of monophasic sleep. The idea of waking in the middle of the night to tend to personal needs or simply contemplate, without a fixed productive purpose, gradually became seen as unproductive or even abnormal. The refinement of calendars also played a role. While calendars existed in ancient times, their increasing accuracy and widespread use, especially for agricultural planning, religious festivals, and later, industrial schedules, reinforced the idea of standardized, quantifiable periods of time. Seasonal variations in sleep, common in ancient societies, began to diminish as fixed work schedules became more prevalent regardless of the length of the day. The rise of mercantilism and early capitalism in the early modern period further accelerated this shift. A precise workday was crucial for organizing labor, trade, and industry. Time became money, and this economic imperative pushed society further away from the fluid, natural rhythms of existence. Factories and workshops, though still reliant on natural light during the day, needed workers to arrive and depart at fixed, clock-driven hours. Even social interactions began to be governed by clocks. Meetings, appointments, and social gatherings could be scheduled with increasing precision, creating a more structured social life that also demanded conformity to external time. It's important to note that this transition was slow and gradual, taking many centuries. For the vast majority of rural populations, the sun remained the primary clock well into the 19th century. But in urban centers, and among the educated and mercantile classes, the influence of the mechanical clock steadily grew, subtly but powerfully reshaping daily routines, including the fundamental act of sleep. This new control over time, while bringing order and efficiency, also introduced a new kind of pressure. The internal biological clock, honed by millennia of natural rhythms, now had to contend with an external, mechanical clock. This nascent tension, the beginning of a subtle disharmony between our innate biology and our constructed schedules, is a precursor to many modern sleep challenges. So, the story of clocks and calendars is not just about measuring time, it's about a fundamental shift in how humanity experienced time, and how this shift began to exert control over the very natural act of sleep. From the flexible, solar-driven patterns of our ancestors, society began its slow march towards the rigid, clock-driven schedules that define our sleep today. As you reflect on the ticking of the clock, allow the thought of this historical shift to settle gently in your mind. Imagine the gradual transition from a world governed by the sun's rhythm to one increasingly orchestrated by the precise, unwavering beat of a machine. Let this historical journey deepen your appreciation for the natural rhythms that our bodies still yearn for, even in a clock-driven world. Let the lingering sound of a distant church bell, marking the hour in a medieval town, bring a final sense of historical calm, preparing your mind for its own peaceful rest, perhaps sensing the subtle echoes of a time before the clock truly ruled the night. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have observed the gradual quantification of time, the subtle shift from natural rhythms to the dictates of the clock. Tonight, we plunge into a period of dramatic societal upheaval that profoundly reshaped human life, and consequently, human sleep, the Industrial Revolution. We will delve into the industrial uproar, sleep in the factory age, exploring how the relentless demands of the factory, the emergence of artificial illumination, and the rapid growth of urban centers irrevocably altered sleep patterns, introducing new challenges and disrupting millennia-old biological rhythms. Imagine a world transforming at an unprecedented pace. The quiet, agrarian rhythms that had governed human life for millennia were suddenly replaced by the deafening roar of machinery, the relentless pace of production, and the artificial glow of gaslight. This was not a gradual shift, but a profound and often brutal transformation of daily existence. The most significant change was the centralization of labor in factories and mills. No longer were people working in their homes or fields, dictating their own pace. Now, they worked long, fixed shifts, often 12 to 16 hours a day, dictated by the relentless turning of machines. These shifts were often designed to maximize output, not to align with human physiology. The introduction of artificial illumination, primarily gaslight, was a game changer. For the first time in human history, light was no longer limited by natural cycles. Factories could operate 24 hours a day, bathed in the steady, albeit often dim and flickering, glow of gas lamps. This meant that workers could be put on night shifts, forcing them to labor through the hours their bodies were naturally programmed for sleep, and to attempt to sleep during the hours their bodies were programmed for wakefulness. Consider the experience of a factory worker trying to sleep in this new age. After a grueling 14-hour shift, perhaps ending in the early morning, they would return to cramped, often unsanitary living conditions in rapidly built urban slums. These were typically overcrowded tenements, where multiple families might share small rooms. Sleep in these conditions was a constant struggle. Noise. The industrial city was a cacophony. The constant hum and clatter of distant factories, the rumble of trains, the shouts of street vendors, and the general din of densely packed urban life would permeate thin walls, making quiet rest almost impossible, even during the day. Light pollution. While not as intense as modern electric lights, gaslight from streets and other buildings would spill into living spaces, disrupting the profound darkness necessary for melatonin production. For those attempting to sleep during the day, the sunlight itself, now a source of unwanted disruption, would be an added challenge. Overcrowding. The lack of personal space, with multiple family members often sharing a single bed or floor space, meant constant disturbance. The sounds, smells, and movements of others were unavoidable. Privacy for sleep, which had begun to emerge in pre-industrial homes, became a luxury beyond the reach of the working class. Poor air quality. Industrial cities were choked with smoke and soot from factories and coal fires. This polluted air would enter homes, affecting respiratory health and further disrupting sleep. Poverty and malnutrition. Insufficient food, poor diet, and chronic illness, rampant among the working poor, further weakened the body and made restorative sleep difficult. Psychological stress. The sheer grind of factory work, the constant fear of unemployment, accidents, and the dehumanizing conditions created immense psychological stress, leading to anxiety and restlessness even when the opportunity for sleep arose. The concept of segmented sleep, which had been a natural and healthy pattern for millennia, began to be viewed as unproductive or a sign of inefficiency in the context of the factory system. The ideal became a single, uninterrupted block of sleep, fitting neatly into the hours outside the fixed work schedule. This cultural shift, driven by industrial demands, directly clashed with innate human biology. The rise of the alarm clock for the masses also intensified during this period. While earlier clocks marked time, the industrial age saw the popularization of the mechanical alarm clock as a necessity to ensure workers reported to their shifts on time. No longer was waking a gentle, natural emergence guided by the sun or birdsong. It was often a jarring, forced awakening dictated by the demands of the factory whistle or the insistent ring of a clock. Children, often employed in factories, suffered even more acutely. Their developing bodies and minds were subjected to brutal hours and conditions, depriving them of the vital sleep needed for growth and learning. The very notion of childhood, and its associated sleep needs, was fundamentally altered. The Industrial Revolution represented a profound decoupling of human sleep from natural rhythms. For the first time on a mass scale, human activity schedules were dictated by artificial illumination and mechanical time, overriding the deep, inherent connection between the body and the sun. This created a widespread, chronic state of sleep deprivation and dissynchronization that had profound public health consequences, leading to increased accidents, illness, and general societal fatigue. So, the factory age, while bringing unprecedented economic and technological advancement, did so at a significant cost to human sleep. It was a period of sensory overload, physical exhaustion, and biological disruption, laying the foundation for many of the sleep challenges we grapple with in the modern world. The industrial roar was not just an external sound, it was a noise that resonated deep within the sleep patterns of an entire generation. As you reflect on the upheaval of the Industrial Revolution, allow the distant, relentless hum of a factory, or the muffled cries from a crowded tenement, to settle gently in your mind. Feel the profound shift from ancient peace to industrial pressure. Let this historical journey deepen your appreciation for the relatively controlled and comfortable sleep environments many of us now enjoy, a stark contrast to the challenges faced by our ancestors in the factory age. Let the lingering thought of a factory worker, attempting to find rest amidst the clamor of a perpetually lit, noisy city, bring a final sense of historical empathy, preparing your mind for its own peaceful slumber, free from the echoes of that industrial uproar. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have just witnessed the profound disruption brought by the Industrial Revolution, severing sleep from its ancient, natural rhythms. Tonight, we turn to another revolutionary force, one that truly conquered the night and utterly transformed human existence, bringing both immense benefits and unforeseen consequences for our slumber: the advent of electric light. We will delve into the electric night, light, longevity, and the loss of darkness, exploring how the widespread adoption of artificial illumination extended the waking day, profoundly altered our relationship with darkness, and laid the groundwork for many of our modern sleep challenges. Imagine a world where, with the flick of a switch, the deep, pervasive darkness of night could be instantly banished. This was the promise of electricity, a promise that began to be realized in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, first in public spaces and factories, and then gradually permeating every home. The invention and widespread adoption of the incandescent light bulb, championed by figures like Thomas Edison, marked a turning point unlike any before. For millennia, human activity was constrained by the sun. After sunset, life slowed, became quieter, and eventually ceased, guided by the dim, warm glow of fire, candles, or oil lamps. Electric light changed everything. The most immediate and obvious impact was the extension of the waking day. No longer limited by the setting sun, work, entertainment, and social activities could continue far into the night. Workplaces, factories, offices, and shops could operate around the clock, leading to the proliferation of permanent night shifts. This exacerbated the circadian disruption that began with the Industrial Revolution, forcing more and more people to work against their natural biological rhythms. Homes. Electric light transformed the domestic sphere. Homes could be brightly lit, making it easy to read, sew, socialize, or engage in hobbies long after dark. The evening became a time for productive leisure, rather than winding down. The concept of an evening as a time for quiet repose began to erode. Public life, streets, theaters, shops, and public spaces could be brilliantly illuminated, creating a vibrant nightlife. Cities truly became cities that never sleep, drawing people out and keeping them active into the late hours. Consider the biological consequences of this newfound ability to banish darkness. Electric light, particularly the early, brighter bulbs, emitted a significant amount of blue spectrum light. This is the very wavelength that powerfully suppresses melatonin production, the hormone crucial for signaling to the body that it's time to sleep. For millennia, as natural light faded in the evening, melatonin would naturally rise, gently ushering in drowsiness. Now, with bright electric lights, that natural signal was constantly overridden. The body's internal clock became confused, receiving signals that it was perpetually daytime, even after sunset. This constant exposure to bright, blue-rich light at night began to profoundly disrupt the circadian rhythm. The precise synchronization between the body's internal clock and the natural solar cycle, honed over hundreds of thousands of years, began to unravel. People found it harder to fall asleep, even when tired, because their bodies were not receiving the clear physiological signals for rest. The loss of profound darkness itself was another significant consequence. For all of human history, night was truly dark. This deep darkness was essential not only for visual rest but for the body's physiological preparation for sleep. With the spread of outdoor lighting, streetlights, and illuminated buildings, light pollution began to erode the natural darkness, even within homes, making it harder to create a truly dark environment conducive to sleep. The electric night also brought a different auditory landscape. While early electric lights were quiet, the systems that powered them, power plants, transformers, introduced a new, low hum into the environment. More significantly, the extended hours of human activity meant more noise, later into the night. Traffic, machinery, and social sounds would continue much longer, adding to the sensory overload that could interfere with sleep. The segmented sleep pattern, which had been a pervasive and natural human rhythm, rapidly disappeared in industrialized societies under the reign of electric light. With the ability to extend the day, and the increasing cultural emphasis on continuous, uninterrupted work, the idea of waking in the middle of the night for a period of conscious activity became an inconvenience, seen as a sign of disordered sleep. The ideal of a single, consolidated block of 8 hours of sleep, directly replacing the 2 sleeps of old, became the new cultural norm, driven by the demands of the industrialized, electrified schedule. This profound alteration of our relationship with light and darkness had both positive and negative impacts. Longevity and productivity. Electric light undeniably extended productive hours, contributed to economic growth, and allowed for safer nighttime activities like surgery or rescue operations. It also enhanced public safety by illuminating previously dark and dangerous streets. Sleep debt and health. However, it led to widespread, chronic sleep deprivation. People were getting less sleep than they needed, often struggling to fall asleep and wake up naturally. This contributed to a range of health issues, from fatigue and reduced cognitive function to an increased risk of chronic diseases. The modern sleep problem truly began with the electric night. So, the electric night was a transformative force that fundamentally reshaped how humanity slept. It conquered the ancient darkness, extended the waking day, and unleashed unprecedented productivity and entertainment. But in doing so, it disrupted millennia of natural sleep rhythms, introducing new challenges to our biological clocks and laying the groundwork for the widespread sleep issues that continue to plague modern society. As you reflect on the brilliance of the electric night, allow yourself to acknowledge both its gifts and its subtle costs. Imagine the profound difference between a world lit only by fire and one bathed in the glow of 1,000 bulbs. Let this historical journey deepen your awareness of the powerful influence light has on your own sleep, and perhaps inspire a conscious reconnection with the natural rhythms our bodies still crave. Let the lingering thought of the first electric streetlights, pushing back the ancient darkness, bring a final sense of historical perspective, preparing your mind for its own peaceful slumber, consciously navigating the bright world we now inhabit. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have just explored the profound impact of electric light, which extended the waking day and began to disrupt our natural sleep rhythms. Tonight, our focus shifts from the external environment to the very object upon which we rest, the bed itself. We will delve into the modern bed, from comfort to customization, tracing its remarkable evolution from simple, utilitarian forms to the highly engineered, personalized sleep systems of today, and how this transformation reflects changing societal values, technological advancements, and our ever-evolving understanding of comfort and health. Imagine, for a moment, the journey of the bed. For millennia, as we've discussed, it was a rudimentary affair, a patch of earth, a pile of leaves, an animal hide, or a simple mat. Its primary purpose was basic elevation from the ground, providing minimal insulation and rudimentary comfort. The idea of a specialized, sophisticated piece of furniture dedicated solely to sleep is a relatively recent development in human history. The significant transformation began in pre-industrial Europe, with the emergence of the bedchamber, as we explored in Chapter 17. The bed evolved from a communal sleeping surface to a more individual piece of furniture for the wealthy. These early beds, though often grand and decorative, were still primarily about status and basic physical support. Mattresses were often simple sacks filled with straw, wool, or feathers, offering limited ergonomic support. The true revolution in bed design, driven by advancements in materials and manufacturing, began to take shape in the late 19th and 20th centuries. 1. The rise of the metal spring. A pivotal innovation was the introduction of metal coil springs into mattress construction, starting in the mid to late 1800s. This was a radical departure from centuries of stuffed sacks. Springs provided actual bounce, resilience, and a new level of support and comfort. No longer did mattresses compress into hard, unyielding lumps. This innovation marked the beginning of the modern mattress, as we understand it. The experience of lying down became significantly more forgiving and supportive. 2. The innerspring mattress dominance. Throughout the 20th century, the innerspring mattress became the dominant form. Manufacturers experimented with different coil counts, gauges, and configurations, e.g., Bonnell coils, pocketed coils, to improve support, durability, and comfort. The goal was to provide a firm yet yielding surface that distributed body weight more evenly, reducing pressure points and promoting better spinal alignment. This era saw the standardization of bed sizes: twin, full, queen, king, reflecting a growing consumer market and mass production. 3. Foam and alternative materials. The mid-20th century brought new materials into the mix. Latex foam, initially derived from rubber trees, and later synthetic polyurethane foam, offered resilient, hypoallergenic, and supportive alternatives to springs. These materials could be molded to create different firmness levels and offer continuous, even support. A particularly notable innovation was memory foam, developed by NASA in the 1960s for aircraft safety but commercialized for mattresses in the 1990s. This viscoelastic foam responds to body heat and pressure, molding to the sleeper's contours, providing exceptional pressure relief and a feeling of being cradled. This marked a significant leap towards truly personalized comfort. 4. The adjustable bed and smart sleep. The late 20th and 21st centuries have seen the bed become an increasingly customizable and technologically integrated sleep system. Adjustable beds. Electrically controlled bases allow sleepers to elevate their head and feet, offering ergonomic positions for reading, watching TV, or alleviating conditions like acid reflux, snoring, or back pain. This empowers individuals to find their optimal sleeping posture. Hybrid mattresses. Combining the best of both worlds. the support of inner springs with the contouring comfort of foam layers, these mattresses aim to offer a balanced sleep experience. Smart beds. The cutting edge of bed technology integrates sensors to track sleep patterns, heart rate, breathing, and even snoring. Some can even automatically adjust firmness or position in response to movement or snoring, aiming to optimize sleep quality in real time. This marks a shift from just providing a surface to actively participating in sleep improvement. Temperature regulation. Modern beds now incorporate features like cooling gels, phase change materials, or even active heating and cooling systems to regulate temperature, addressing a key factor in sleep comfort. This evolution of the bed reflects several underlying societal shifts. Focus on individual comfort and health. Sleep transition from a shared necessity to a personal pursuit of optimal rest and well-being. Increased consumer choice. A competitive market led to a vast array of options, catering to individual preferences for firmness, material, and features. Technological advancement. Innovation in materials science, electronics, and data tracking continually redefines what a bed can be. Shift from quantity to quality of sleep. As sleep became more challenging in the modern world, the quality of the sleep surface became a critical factor in achieving restorative rest. The modern bed is no longer just a place to lie down. It is a meticulously engineered environment designed to maximize comfort, support, and even optimize the very act of sleep itself. From humble straw to sophisticated sensors, the bed has mirrored humanity's journey from basic survival to a profound emphasis on individual well-being and technological control. As you reflect on the bed you currently rest upon, consider the millennia of evolution that brought it to its current form. Appreciate the advancements in comfort and customization that allow for a more supportive and personalized sleep experience than any of our ancestors could have imagined. Let this historical journey deepen your awareness of the dedicated effort that has gone into perfecting our modern resting place. Let the lingering thought of a perfectly contoured mattress, supporting your body in comfort, bring a final sense of appreciation for the ingenuity that transformed a simple sleeping surface into the sophisticated, customized haven of the modern bed. Welcome back to our quiet journey through the history of human rest. We have traced the evolution of the bed, a testament to our quest for physical comfort in sleep. Tonight, we arrive at the threshold of our present moment, a time defined by an omnipresent force that has profoundly and perhaps most radically reshaped our relationship with sleep, the digital age. We will delve into the global disconnect, sleep in the digital age. Exploring how smartphones, omnipresent screens, constant connectivity, and the relentless flow of information have created unprecedented challenges for our slumber, leading to a pervasive disconnect from the natural rhythms that once governed human rest. Imagine a world where light is always available, information is always flowing, and social connection is always a click away, regardless of the hour. This is the reality of the digital age, a reality that has unfolded at breakneck speed, leaving our ancient biology struggling to adapt. The most significant factor impacting sleep in the digital age is ubiquitous screen time. Our smartphones, tablets, laptops, and televisions emit copious amounts of blue spectrum light. Unlike the warm, dim light of ancient fires or even early electric bulbs, modern LED screens flood our eyes with the very wavelength that most effectively suppresses melatonin, the hormone crucial for signaling to our bodies that it's time for sleep. Spending hours on screens in the evening sends a powerful, confusing signal to our brain: it's still daytime. Stay awake and alert. This directly interferes with the body's natural wind-down process. Beyond the light, it is the content on these screens that further disrupts our ability to disengage and prepare for rest. News feeds, social media, video streaming, gaming, and work emails provide a relentless stream of stimulating information. Cognitive arousal. Engaging with exciting, alarming, or emotionally charged content right before bed stimulates the brain, making it difficult to quiet the mind and transition into a restful state. Our brains, designed for periods of rest and quiet, are now constantly on. Emotional stimulation. Scrolling through social media can trigger anxiety, FOMO, fear of missing out, or comparison, leading to mental chatter that interferes with sleep. Perceived productivity obligation. The constant availability of work emails or messaging apps creates a blurring of boundaries between work and personal life, leading to a feeling of perpetual obligation that encroaches on rest time. The concept of always on connectivity has erased the natural boundaries between day and night, work and rest, individual and collective. For millennia, night was a time of enforced disengagement. Now, even when we physically retreat to our beds, our minds can remain tethered to the global network. This constant accessibility means we are never truly off-duty, never fully separated from external demands and stimuli. The blurring of work-life boundaries is a major culprit. With remote work, global teams, and the expectation of instant communication, the workday often stretches into what was once protected personal time. Late-night emails, calls across time zones, or the pressure to constantly respond means that the sacred sleep window is increasingly encroached upon. Sleep tracking technology, while promising better sleep, also introduces a new form of cognitive arousal. While helpful for insights, constantly monitoring sleep metrics can lead to orthosomnia, an unhealthy obsession with achieving perfect sleep, ironically leading to anxiety that further disrupts rest. The very tools designed to help us sleep better can, paradoxically, make us more stressed about it. The sheer volume of information available digitally also contributes to sleep challenges. Our brains are constantly bombarded with data, news, and notifications. This cognitive load can overwhelm the system, making it difficult to switch off at night. The temptation to just check one more thing becomes an almost irresistible habit. The auditory landscape of the digital age is also unique. While our homes might be physically quieter than an industrial city, the pervasive sounds often come from personal devices, notifications, alerts, background noise from streaming content, or the hum of charging electronics. Even when silent, the potential for noise and interruption is always present, keeping a subtle part of our brain on alert. This global disconnect has had profound consequences. Widespread sleep deprivation. Many individuals consistently get less sleep than their bodies need, leading to chronic fatigue, impaired cognitive function, and an increased risk of physical and mental health issues. Circadian misalignment. The constant exposure to artificial light at night and the irregular sleep schedules driven by digital demands contribute to widespread circadian rhythm disorders. Erosion of sleep quality. Even when individuals get sufficient hours, the quality of sleep can be diminished due to fragmented sleep, difficulty reaching deep restorative stages, and increased latency to sleep onset. The sacrifice of sleep. In a culture that often values constant productivity and connectivity, sleep is frequently the first thing sacrificed, seen as a dispensable commodity rather than a fundamental biological necessity. The digital age, while offering unparalleled convenience and connection, has simultaneously created an environment fundamentally at odds with our ancient sleep biology. We are, in a sense, biologically maladapted to the 21st century night. Reclaiming healthy sleep in this era requires a conscious, deliberate effort to create boundaries, manage light exposure, and cultivate mindful disengagement, actions that were once the natural consequence of living in a pre-electric world. As you reflect on the bright, noisy, and constantly connected world around you, allow yourself to acknowledge the unique challenges it poses to your own rest. Imagine the profound silence and deep darkness that once defined human nights, and how far we have drifted from that natural state. Let this historical journey deepen your awareness of the choices you can make to protect your precious sleep from the pervasive demands of the digital age. Let the lingering thought of a screen's glow in a dark room, a beacon of perpetual connectivity, bring a final sense of critical awareness, gently guiding your mind towards the conscious creation of a peaceful, unplugged haven for your own restorative slumber. Welcome, for the final time in this journey, to our quiet exploration of the history of human rest. We have journeyed through the ancient, natural rhythms, witnessed their gradual erosion through industrialization and the electric night, and confronted the pervasive challenges of the digital age. Tonight, we turn our gaze forward, armed with the wisdom of the past, to explore how we can reclaim the night in our modern lives. We will delve into reclaiming the night, modern strategies for ancestral sleep, offering practical, gentle approaches to reconnect with the deep, restorative patterns of rest that defined human existence for millennia, allowing us to thrive in our complex contemporary world. The insights from our historical journey reveal that our modern sleep struggles are not simply individual failings, but largely a consequence of a profound mismatch between our ancient biology and our artificial environments. The good news is that by understanding these historical shifts, we can consciously adapt our modern habits to better align with our innate needs. Here are gentle strategies, inspired by the wisdom of ancestral sleep, to help you reclaim your night. 1. Embrace the power of natural light and darkness. This is perhaps the single most impactful change you can make. Morning light exposure. As soon as possible after waking, seek out natural light. Step outside, open curtains wide, or sit by a window. Even on cloudy days, outdoor light is significantly brighter than indoor light. This strong dose of morning light signals to your body that the day has begun, powerfully suppressing melatonin and helping to set your circadian rhythm. Think of our ancestors rising with the sun, directly stimulated by its gentle ascent. Daytime light exposure. Spend as much time as possible in natural daylight throughout the day. If you work indoors, position your desk near a window. Take short walks outside during breaks. Consistent daylight exposure keeps your internal clock robust and well calibrated. Evening dimming. As dusk approaches, begin to consciously dim your environment. Gradually reduce overhead lights. Use warmer, lower wattage lamps. Embrace the power of soft, ambient light. Blue light blocking. This is crucial in the digital age. In the hours leading up to bedtime, ideally 2 to 3 hours, minimize exposure to blue light emitting screens, phones, tablets, computers, bright TVs. Use blue light filtering glasses. Activate night mode settings on your devices, or consider using apps that shift screen color temperatures. Remember the profound absence of blue light after dark for our ancestors. This allowed melatonin to naturally rise. 2. Cultivate a quiet, dark, and cool sleep sanctuary. Our ancestors instinctively sought protected spaces for rest. You can recreate this darkness Make your bedroom as dark as possible. Use blackout curtains or blinds. Cover any glowing indicator lights from electronics. Even small amounts of light can disrupt sleep. Quiet. Minimize noise. If you live in a noisy environment, consider earplugs or a white noise machine using natural sounds like gentle rain or distant waves, rather than artificial static. Remember the deep silence of ancient nights, broken only by natural sounds. Cool temperature. Aim for a slightly cool bedroom temperature, typically between 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body naturally cools down to initiate sleep. Our ancestors would seek the cooler parts of their dwellings after the day's heat. Comfortable bedding. Ensure your mattress and pillows provide good support and comfort, reflecting the advancements we've made in bed technology. 3. Embrace evening rituals and wind-down practices. Like our ancestors gathering around the fire, create predictable, soothing routines that signal to your body it's time to transition to rest. Digital sunset. Establish a firm, digital curfew. Put away screens an hour or two before bed. Quiet activities. Engage in calming activities. Reading a physical book by dim, warm light, listening to soothing music, gentle stretching or yoga, journaling, or quiet conversation with loved ones. Warm bath or shower. A warm bath or shower before bed can relax muscles and, as your body cools afterwards, can facilitate sleep. Herbal teas. Sip a calming, non-caffeinated herbal tea, chamomile, valerian, lavender. Gratitude or reflection. Take a few moments to reflect on your day with gratitude or practice mindfulness. This helps to calm the active mind. 4. Reconnect with segmented sleep if it suits you. For some, forcing a single 8-hour block of sleep is unnatural. If you find yourself waking in the middle of the night, instead of immediately reaching for your phone or stressing, try quiet wakefulness. Embrace it as a potential first watch. Stay in bed, in the dark, and engage in quiet reflection, gentle meditation, or silent prayer. Avoid stimulating activities. This acknowledges an ancient rhythm rather than fighting it. Return to sleep. Often, after 20 to 60 minutes of quiet, the body will naturally drift back into a second sleep. 5. Mind your meals and movement. Evening meal. Eat your last substantial meal a few hours before bed. To allow for digestion, avoid heavy, rich, or spicy foods close to bedtime. Caffeine and alcohol. Be mindful of caffeine consumption, especially in the afternoon and evening. While alcohol might initially induce drowsiness, it disrupts sleep quality later in the night. Daytime movement. Engage in regular physical activity during the day, particularly outdoors. This builds natural sleep pressure and reinforces circadian rhythm. Avoid intense exercise too close to bedtime. 6. Prioritize sleep in a productivity-driven world. This is perhaps the most challenging, but vital, step. In a culture that often values constant activity, consciously choose to prioritize your rest. Set a consistent sleep schedule. Go to bed and wake up around the same time each day, even on weekends. This strengthens your circadian rhythm. Say no. Learn to set boundaries on work, social engagements, and digital consumption that encroach on your sleep time. View sleep as productive. Reframe sleep not as lost time, but as essential time for physical repair, mental consolidation, emotional processing, and creative insight, truly productive time for your overall well-being. The journey to reclaim the night is not about reverting to a primitive existence. It's about intelligently integrating the enduring wisdom of our ancestral sleep patterns with the realities and advancements of our modern lives. It's about recognizing that our biological blueprint for rest is still profoundly relevant, and by honoring it, we can unlock deeper well-being, greater resilience, and a more harmonious existence in a world that often pulls us away from our natural rhythms. As you prepare for your own slumber tonight, allow yourself to feel the echoes of millennia of human sleep. Embrace the darkness, invite the quiet, and gently guide your body and mind towards the restorative peace that is your natural inheritance. The night awaits, not as a void to be filled, but as a sacred space for renewal. May your night be deep, your rest profound, and your awakening gentle, in harmony with the timeless rhythms of life.